control, shoveling dirt in every hole. Predators to condemn your soul, watching you and watching me. We're all connected but separated, misunderstood and so frustrated. A million armies of one have invaded, watching you and watching me. We live behind glass curtains and act like nothing's wrong. Soon you will belong. I know you're out there somewhere. We've watched you for so long. Wait for you to fall. We'll expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. The little brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye, we're the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. We the people have taken over. We the people are little brother, standing by to dethrone each other, watching you and watching me. Paranoid, the lens is our weapon, desensitized in our lust for attention, democratized by our voyeur obsessions, watching you and watching me. Lives to perfection, don't let them project you as you are, reveal your every flaw. I know you're out there somewhere. We've watched you for so long. Wait for you to fall. We'll expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. Little brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye, we're the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. Stay in line, don't make a mistake. We're watching. We watched you for so long. We wait for you to fall. We will expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching
let your experience begin right now. From high atop the mountains of British Columbia to you listening around the world, this is Spaced Out Radio. You can follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, on Twitter, @SpacedOutRadio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. You can follow us on Instagram, Dave Scott, SOR, or on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show.
They let us play with all our toys. They let us think that we're big boys. They let us make the louder noise, but women rule the world. They let us think we're Superman, that we're the only ones who can be strong, but we break on command, cause women rule the world.
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go for a ride as we are live on Spaced Out Radio.
I try to act so cool, but you know I'm just a fool for you. And we'll stop till I reach the top just to be there with you. And I still trip over my feet, and my heart still scares me.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Said the deeper I go, the deeper I fall.
Good to have you with us on this Tuesday night, early Wednesday morning. If you're on the East Coast, thank you so much for listening in. If you're tuning in on spacedoutradio.com, on Spreaker, and now on Revolution Radio. Here at Spaced Out Radio, we are broadcasting 3 hours a night, 7 days a week. Why? We want to be your official one-stop shop when it comes to the conspiratorial, ufological, extraterrestrial, and so much more. Like our music on the Spaced Out Radio side, that's because our music god himself, Ron Bumblefoot THAL, formerly of Guns N' Roses, is rockin' and rollin' here on a nightly basis. He is the official music of Spaced Out Radio as we kick things off on a nightly basis with Little Brother Is Watching. You can check us out on Twitter, @SpacedOutRadio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, I can be followed at Dave Scott, SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show, and our website is spacedoutradio.com. At this time, we say hello to everyone listening in the Revolution Radio chat room on the High Plains Talk Radio Network, in the Spaced Out Radio chat room on Spreaker, along with our fans at Euphoria Chronicles, Chronicles of the Unknown, Forest Moon Paranormal, and our flagship chat room, the SOR Space Travelers. Have you signed up for the SOR Space Travelers yet? Well, it's time if you haven't. It's only $5 a month, and with that, your name gets entered into monthly prize draws. You get access to private group interviews, access to a special section on our website, and much more. We're going to give you a hell of a lot more than just access to our archives. While at spacedoutradio.com, you can read our latest blogs, like mine, on trying to capture the emotions of listeners, and you can read up on Eric Markham's SOR Spacewire for your latest in weird and strange news. Tonight's show is brought to you by Rivulet Reiki and Readings, providing healings in person or to distance. PurplePlates.com, helping heal your body, mind, and soul. The New Agora newspaper is the official paper of this show, and the iTunes app Spirit Storybox. It's the official ghost hunting app of SOR. Remember, if you are listening on Revolution Radio, it is the largest nonprofit online radio station online. Take the time to visit freedomslips.com and donate today. It's been 50 years since the skies over Kecksburg, Pennsylvania opened up and something came crashing to Earth. What that was, well, it's still up for debate. Here's the background. The Kecksburg UFO incident, or so it's called, occurred on December 9th, 1965. A large, brilliant fireball was seen by thousands in at least 6 states and the province of Ontario. It streaked over Detroit, Michigan, Windsor, Ontario area, reportedly dropped hot metal debris over Michigan and northern Ohio, starting some grass fires along the way. It caused sonic booms in western Pennsylvania. It was generally assumed and reported by the press to be a meteor after authorities discounted other proposed explanations such as a plane crash, errant missile tests, or re-entering of satellite debris. So what was it? John Ventre lives by Kecksburg and is also Pennsylvania's director for MUFON. Along with being an accomplished author, he's well known as one of the premier researchers when it comes to UFOs and extraterrestrial contact. He's an encyclopedia when it comes to the Kecksburg incident, which is why we have him on Spaced Out Radio tonight. We bring in John Ventre now. John, thank you so much for stopping by and being with us. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me on.
It's an absolute pleasure to get you on because I think the Kecksburg incident really got swept under the rug comparatively to Roswell. And we're going to get into that heavily, but let's start with you for a moment here, John, because everybody has a story as to why they got involved in this field. What made you turn to studying UFOs?
Well, it's probably a very different story than anybody you've ever talked to. Nearly everyone I know at MUFON got into this because they were into UFOs as a 10-year-old and they read books or they saw a UFO. Well, I didn't get into this until I was 39 years old. I've never seen a UFO, and I had no interest in UFOs. The way I got involved really was I decided to write a novel, a sci-fi novel, and I decided to write it on end time prophecy, the Mayan calendar, all of that with 2012. But while I was doing that research, I kept coming across different cultures that, you know, they talked about people from the sky, star people, people on flying shields, and I said to myself, you know, I need to I need to look at this UFO stuff. You know, at the same time, I was watching X-Files and sightings mostly. And what I remembered from the show was when they talked about UFOs, they would bring the MUFON investigator, and I had no idea what that was. So I started that research in '96, and then I joined MUFON in '98. So that's how I got started. It was really through end time prophecy and writing a sci-fi novel that I said, let me take a look. It's been 18, 19 years now. And, you know, every time you think you got this figured out, you know, you learn something else and you say, well, that doesn't fit.
And yet you still haven't seen a UFO, and they're streaking all over the skies. What kind of encounter are you looking for besides something way up high that could be misconstrued as a satellite?
Well, I mean, me personally, what I want to see is that low level, you know, under 500 feet, where I can see it's a craft. You know, we get a lot of these high level cases at MUFON. I mean, altitude level, and you know, you don't really know what they are. Now we go through a bunch of websites and we look for satellites, the space station, all of that. You know, I thought I saw one in 2008. When we had that big UFO wave across Pennsylvania. And I remembered it was June 28th. It was 10:21 p.m. I had a pair of Dobermans at the time, and they were well trained. So I would let them out the front door. I walked out with them. I looked up. I saw this bright light, and then I lost it behind the clouds. So I went to some of the tracking websites, and it turned out it was just a meteor that was passing by in a reflected moonlight. So those are the type of cases we get. But then we get good cases. Case 47,000 over Altoona was just lights in the sky like that, and we got radar back. And it showed on the radar that there was a small plane like a Cessna had to take a hard left to avoid, I think it was 9 UFOs that were in the sky, and we got that on radar. So, you know, sometimes the lights in the sky turn out to be something really good, but a lot of times they really don't. But, you know, for me, I'd like to see a low-flying UFO or have a CE3, you know, where it is, you know, an entity.
Well, I'll rub it in a little bit. The closest I have been to a UFO is approximately 150 yards.
Wow.
I was at a friend's house. This happened on a very cloudy night in a rural part of the town where I was. They had 10 acres kind of on a mountaintop in the backwoods of my town. and for some reason I felt anxious about going outside. And so my friend and I went outside, and you could just feel there was something there, if you understand what I'm saying by that. You know, like almost like the feeling you're getting watched.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, you called us outside. Where are you? And 150 yards away. Didn't even yell that. I'm talking in the same tone as I'm talking to you and our audience. And I said, where are you? And 150 yards on the ground, this ship lit up.
Wow.
It was the most amazing thing next to my children being born that I have ever seen. And to be that close and personal, I'll tell you, you know, you get a lot of these people out there, John, who will say, oh, I would run up to it, I would take photos or anything like that. But when you have a life-altering experience, something supernatural like that happen to you, all bets are off. You know, you start hitting the panic button, you start wondering what the Sam hell is going on. And that's why, I'm going to tell you, like 6 months later, I started up Spaced Out Radio.
Yeah. Well, we're all drawn to this for a reason. And, you know, like I've talked to, like, Richard Dolan has seen a UFO, and he's had some sort of telepathic communication. Jan Harzan, who's the director of MUFON, he had a very close encounter, him and his brother did, you know, with the UFO. But then conversely, Stan Gordon, who lives 2 miles from me, he's never seen one. Stanton Friedman has never seen one. I've never seen one. But there seems to be, when you talk to the people in this, a lot of them have actually had paranormal encounters, something else, interdimensional, ghostly, etc. But they've had something happen, and something draws them into this field. Like I said, with myself, I had no interest. You know, I was head of security at UPS. It's like, you know, what am I doing looking at UFOs? But I was pulled into this. And, you know, as much as I try sometimes to get out, I say I'm not going to write any more books. And, you know, it's like then more happens, more pulls you in.
Absolutely. Are you surprised by how many ufologists or UFO researchers out there haven't had an experience?
Actually, yeah, because, you know, well, actually a lot of them have had it, and a lot of the MUFON state directors have told me they've had you know, an experience. But the ones that haven't, there's usually something else that pulls them into the field, you know. Either somebody else brought them in, or they had an other type encounter. You know, we'll talk later, like when you said you had that sense that something else was with you. Well, I've had that because my whole life I've had paranormal encounters that culminated with an actual exorcist movie type demonic attack upon me just 8 months ago, but we'll talk about that later. But as far as the UFO goes, nope, I haven't seen one.
I have heard from a lot of researchers that they're saying almost the same thing, and it has me really a little baffled, that they're saying that although we still need to hear experiencers' experiences, they're not as important as they once were to the research of ufology. Do you agree with that?
Well, no, I think you still need to hear all of the stories, but the problem, you know, that we get is they're just stories. They're anecdotal information, and some of them are great stories, and you know, and that's one of the things. You know, we'll get these cases, and I was trained in behavioral analysis, interviewing, interrogations. I would train people on body language, etc. So, you know, I'll interview people, and I'm telling you, when they can keep telling you what happened next, you know they're being truthful. You know, some people I've talked to, and it's like, well, what happened next? Well, if you got to think about it and you got to make something else, then you probably made up the whole story to start with. You know, but you know, some people they can tell you every detail. They can tell you what happened next, what happened next, what happened next. So, you know, I think the biggest problem ufology has, though, is really the media. You know, it's the mainstream media not willing to cover it. You know, that Project Mockingbird, where the CIA during World War II got involved with all of the newspapers and media, you know, to cover things up, secrets, war secrets, etc. That continued. where the CIA has had heavy influence in the media, and they have killed the UFO. I hate to say it, but getting disclosure, any progress, we have gone backwards in the last 30, 40, 50 years. When you think about the 60s, with Congressman Ford, and actually it's the anniversary of this year, the 50th anniversary of the Michigan sighting. Here's Congressman Ford asking for congressional hearings and getting it. You had the senator that ran for president. I don't know why I always draw a blank on his name. Around the Nixon time, he was a member of a UFO group. Bobby Kennedy was a card-carrying member of the amalgamated UFO group. You try that now. You can't get any politicians to take it serious. The media downplays it. I mean, the CIA, that's why people ask me, have you ever had a man in black, has the CIA followed you, the dark vehicles? No, because the CIA doesn't care about this. They laugh. They know that they have won the battle with the media and the universities, and the politicians as far as UFOs go. So I'm not worried one bit that somebody's going to knock me off or I'm going to disappear, and it's our government and the CIA, because they know that nobody's really taking it serious. So I'm not worried at all.
And it's funny because on Thursday night, just 2 nights from now, I'm going to have former Coast to Coast AM host Ian Punnett on my show here for a couple of hours to talk about the state of journalism and why the media does not take any of these stories seriously. We're going to get heavy into that on Thursday night, and I think the point that you just made, that the CIA won the battle over this, or the whatever alphabet group it is, it's amazing how they've been able to trigger absolutely everything to gain that control, to take away the true meaning of what could be the second biggest story of mankind's history, next to Christ himself coming back down.
Yeah, absolutely. I know Ian. I did the first Ancient Alien conference in Minnesota with him and Giorgio and Van Daniken and all of that. Actually, I think I was one of the few speakers there that wasn't part of the TV show. But, I mean, you just look at this political thing going on right now. The amount of spinning and lies, and you could see, how the media was trying to they didn't want Trump. I mean, we are not told the truth, and they have an agenda. There's a group that's behind that. And they the whole Black Lives Matter thing, I really believe if we had real investigative journalism, somebody's got to research that and find out who's really behind the group. Where's the money coming from? There is a group somewhere, whether it's Soros, Angela Merkel, that group that's trying to take down this country. They're behind that because the truth, when you look up the numbers, don't support what the people are saying, and I don't want to get into the whole politics, but that's just an example of the spinning and the lies that come from the media. And more people are going to alternative media like this show and the internet to get the truth. There's a lot of lies out there with that too, but I come across a lot of good information. And a good example, this is a great example, is I knew about the NSA center in Utah before it was announced, before it hit the air. And I can prove it. When I was on the Anderson Cooper show, I brought that up, and he didn't believe any of that. That was in 2012. But I had just read the story in Wired magazine and read it on some internet site, PAC News or something like that it was called, about the whole NSA and all of that. And I wrote a book, Apophis 2029. I put a chapter in there about the NSA and everything that they were doing and diagrams and the whole hierarchy of the NSA. Now, that was all published before the story hit. And when the story hit, I think that was like later in 2013. It was actually about a year after I had heard about this and published my book. It came out in 2013. every single media outlet, congressman, senator, governor, they knew nothing about it. They all lied. And I'm sitting there saying, wait a second, I just read the story on PAC News, on Wired Magazine, and if you look at the copyright date in my book, Apophis 2029, there's a chapter in there, and it's a year prior to the story breaking. So I got that off the alternative news, and it was totally true.
But I will say this with the alternative news, and I fully agree with you, you have to be able to trust it. But the one thing that I have noticed recently in regards to it is the fact that it is becoming sensationalized, much like the mainstream is. And I would say that love him or hate him, you know, Alex Jones is probably the leader of that. And where I really noticed it was around Super Bowl time, where he came on social media using Periscope or Facebook Live or whatever he was using, and he's like, ladies and gentlemen, we have serious news that we have breaking news regarding the Super Bowl coming up this weekend. It's fixed. We know who the winner is. So he gets everybody pumped up, and then he says the owners and the advertisers are the winner. Like, are you kidding me? You know, and then he did the exact same thing with that $1 billion Powerball that happened. And as a former journalist myself, John, I just shook my head because this is exactly what the alternative media was created for, is to get away from that crap. And here's somebody like Alex Jones, who has a lot of pull, going right back into that field.
Well, you know, it's money talks, and if you can get the higher ratings and there's money behind everything, I agree with you. I mean, eventually the whole alternative media is going to be bastardized also, where it's all about the money and the lies and the spin and ratings. And, you know, I say to people, too, you look at the Ancient Aliens TV show. Come on. I mean, that show gives us such a black eye. You know, that's why, like I said, the CIA sits back and laughs, because people watch Ancient Aliens, and it's 80% made up by the writers. It's total BS, you know. But you had the Hangar One MUFON TV show that we had a case file behind every one of those. Those were good episodes. We drew 20% higher audience than Ancient Aliens, and they took the Hangar One show off. So, you know, this stuff doesn't make sense.
Maybe it's because you don't have Giorgio's hair.
I don't have any hair much left.
You know, it is disappointing, to say the least. And, you know, I think people such as yourself and other people in the field who are outspoken about it, that's just the way we have to be. We have to be able to bring these people back and say, you know what, don't be fooled. You're not a stupid person. You know, you're better than this. Don't be fooled by this. Because, I mean, just what you said with Ancient Aliens, we're also seeing the exact same thing with Bigfoot in all these Bigfoot shows. Finding Bigfoot, killing Bigfoot. You know, we're seeing the exact same things. I remember talking to a Canadian scientist who's been studying Bigfoot for 70 years. And when I asked him what he thought of a couple of these TV shows, he took a deep, big sigh. His name's John Bindernagel. Took a big sigh, John, and he just said, well, they're going to do what they have to do for the money.
Absolutely. I mean, you saw it it goes in cycles. You had all the ghost hunting shows, you know, and they were faking all of that, the noises, the voices. You can't get that on every show. And like you said, the Bigfoot, you know, they're out in the woods. And I don't watch any of those shows because I know that the TV stuff is faked. And you had, what was it, Chasing UFOs with James Fox, where they actually showed you a light in the sky, and it was a CGI UFO, and that, you know, made us look bad. But I'll tell you one thing, you know, people try to criticize MUFON, and you know, they'll find one thing wrong in the show, that, you know, we showed the wrong version airplane for that time period, you know. But I'm telling you, the stuff that we presented on Hangar One, we had a case file for. that was the investigation. That's real history, you know, and the History Channel tells us that, well, we're going to go back to our roots with real history, yet they keep the Ancient Alien show. Tell me what's true about the Ancient Alien show. I mean, they lost me in season 3 when they said Da Vinci was an alien. That's the last time I watched that show.
I can honestly say I never watched it.
Yeah.
I really haven't. You know, I did 17 minutes of Finding Bigfoot one night, and when I saw the ridiculousness after meeting a few of these people who are actually true researchers, I just turned it off and I said, I can't do this. As someone who has also seen Bigfoot, I can't do this.
You know, about a month ago, I put my Facebook rant out there about what I just said, you know, and why the Hank and One show was the real show. And then I was laying in bed. I said, all right, I was surfing channels, and there was Ancient Aliens. I said, okay, let me watch it. It's, you know, season 11. You know, it was 2016. There's David Wilcock talking about the project, not Paperclip, I can't think of the name now, where Admiral... where he went to the Antarctica, and he's saying that the UFOs were cutting our ships in half with lasers. And I'm saying, are you kidding me? He was just flat out making the story up when Admiral Byrd went down there. There were 3 casualties in that operation where we sent 4,700 troops, 13 ships, an aircraft carrier. There were 3 casualties. 2 was a plane that got crashed in a blizzard, and 1 was a guy loading, you know, the dock, and the boxes fell on him, and he got killed. And here's David Wilcock saying they're cutting our ships in half with lasers. That's the type of stuff that they show on Ancient Aliens. That's why I can't watch it. Operation High Jump is what that was.
Well, you know what? Let's get into UFOs.
Okay.
You love the topic. I love the topic. Eric Cooper in the SOR Space Travelers chat room on Facebook is asking you, John, what do you think of UFO Hunters with Bill Burns?
I thought it was a good show. I did. I can tell you a little story with that too. I did an episode with them on the Bucks County case with Denise, the woman saw the metallic were dropped into the tree and all of that. And we were planned to do another episode on the Cliff case, the guy who saw the 6-sided UFO that looked like 6 UFOs, triangular UFOs that were docked. And we got that on radar. And there's a whole story behind that. But the story I want to tell you, though, is I'm driving to Philly to film the episode with Denise. And John Greenwald is the director of that episode. And I get a phone call from the Philly Tower saying, hey, if you guys want to come up and film, we can do that. And I said, great, I'm on my way to Philly. I call John Greenwald and I tell him, he goes, well, John, we can't break off. The crew is here doing this episode. That episode's 3 weeks from now. So I call Kevin Berry, the guy doing the other episode on the radar, and I tell him we got an invitation to go up and film at the tower. He calls me back in about an hour. I'm driving. I'm still on the highway going to Philly, and he goes, John, I got bad news. The New York FAA called and said you don't have permission to go up to the Philly Tower. And he says, I got even more bad news. The History Channel called, and they killed the entire episode. So you talk about, you know, the FAA throwing its weight around. They got that second episode killed, and I can prove that the FAA lied because the people at the Philly Tower sent me the radar discs, and we printed them off, and we got paint screens of objects that shouldn't be there. And I've got 4 letters from the FAA out of D.C. and New York saying they had no records, but yet I have the records in my possession. And the thing is, they killed that episode, and then 3 weeks later, when the Dulce episode aired, they killed UFO Hunters.
That's too bad, because it seemed like the only credible show out there. I mean, watching Bill's exuberance on television, where you know, he was going against his scientist and his skeptic. I mean, it was fantastic, and they went everywhere, man. They went absolutely everywhere. Like nothing stopped them. I really liked that show.
No, if you were a UFO investigator, I think every one of the 3,000 MUFON investigators watched UFO Hunters. I mean, it was like UFOs 101, how to do the investigation. But I tell you what, though, those shows, you know, that was a job, because you had to go out on site, and every episode was 4 to 5 days of filming. You know, when we did Hangar 1, luckily we didn't use that format. We went to the documentary and interviews and archival footage, where when I went to film, I would film 7, 8 episodes in one day. In 2 days, I filmed the entire season, and I was done. I went home. When you do the UFO Hunter type, and the one that Daryl Sims was in, where they went out to interview the witnesses, that's a job. You're there 5 days a week, and you can't have another job. This is your job.
When it comes to Kecksburg, as we transition into this story now, you live very close to this area. Is it still a talked about story today, or is it just part of legend and lore, much like Mothman is in Point Pleasant?
Well, I think everybody in this area knows about it, and they have a Kecksburg festival every year, and it draws thousands and thousands of people. Matter of fact, last year, you know, I was kind of amazed that they sold, I think, 1,100 T-shirts at the 50th anniversary of Kecksburg. So what I did this year is, you know, we bought our MUFON T-shirts for our Pennsylvania group and brought them to sell. And it was the worst rain you ever want to see for 3 days. The attendance was probably 20% of what it had been. I think we sold 14 T-shirts, unfortunately. But they do a big festival, and we do, you know, free lectures for that. So I think everyone in this area, if you say Kecksburg in southwestern PA, I think everybody knows about it.
What happened on December 9th, 1965?
Well, there's what happened, and then there's... I would say like the urban legend or the scientific investigation of it. On that, it was 4:47 in the evening, and you described what happened coming in. But it made a turn at Cleveland, and it made a turn at Pittsburgh to avoid those cities, and that's an important point. And when it was coming down, it was glowing green. And it also looked like a 4-pointed star. So it crashed into the woods, and the military gets there in about 40 minutes. And there were some of those Nike missile sites around here, and it would have been about the right time to notify them, and they drive, the 20, 25 miles over to get here. So and then, Project Blue Book claims that there were 3 Air Force officers on the scene. That's all. They didn't remove anything, or what they did remove was a meteor. That's all they found, a meteor. And they didn't track this on radar. So then the investigation starts, and you find out that Canada tracked it on radar, and that information is out there. There's also some pictures in the sky of the trail that it had left, and the interviews of the people. It came down glowing green. It kind of looked like a 4-pointed star. But then last year, I got involved with an engineer who came to me and said he can prove Kecksburg was a U.S. spy satellite of Russia. And, I said, yeah, right. But I tell you what, I said, you know what? I got a lot of questions for you. We went through every aspect of the Kecksburg UFO crash, and he was able to answer every one of my questions. So I'm at the point, and I'll give you some of that evidence in a second, I'm at the point right now where Kecksburg bothered me because it came down on fire like space debris. And one of the stories was that it was Cosmos 96, which it wasn't. That came down over Canada and broke apart 13 hours earlier, and even NASA says that, that's what happened with Cosmos 96. But Kecksburg came down on fire. And you look at all the other UFO incidents, they're brought down by radar or whatever it could be, and the ship, it kind of comes down like a falling leaf. It doesn't come down burning on fire, crashing, into the woods. So what we figured out was the GE Mark II was a spy satellite that replaced the U-2. and they were launched out of Johnson Island, which is over by Hawaii. They were launched over the South Pole, and they were timed to come, around and take pictures over Russia. They would eject the film capsule, and then the space capsule would then crash into the ocean, and the Navy would recover the parachute of the film capsule. So there were a couple of them that were unaccounted for, and some were suborbital, some of them were orbital. And the thing about it, though, is that it had a copper alloy heat shield, which, when we researched it, would glow green when they heated up coming into the atmosphere. It also had 4 control jets on it that are used in space. They don't do anything in low atmosphere, but they would have been on. So that accounts for 2 of the descriptions of it coming in. The turning, it had the ability, like a weight and balance system, as it's skimming off the atmosphere coming in, they could shift the weight to the left or the right, and it would actually turn. And there are quotes from generals that these things were made to land in almost a precise location. So they controlled it so that it doesn't hit Cleveland or Pittsburgh. That's where it veered away from both of those cities. Now, we know that Blue Book lied about not tracking it on radar because the Army was here in 40 minutes. They had to have tracked it. Their witnesses on the ground said they saw about 24 Army people. There were 4 NASA and 3 Air Force people there. So the only part that they told the truth about Blue Book was that there were 3 Air Force. They didn't mention the Army and the NASA people. The 4 NASA guys who were in radiation suits and carried a box into the woods, which we believe was a lead box, because the GE Mark II had an atomic generator in it. You couldn't have it leaking radiation as you drive it down the turnpike. It had to be removed. Some people saw a blue arcing in the woods, which I believe was them cutting, with a blowtorch cutting it out, because it hit the ground at maybe 150, 200 miles an hour, and they had to remove that from it. So, really every aspect, even the, there was one notarized drawing of it by Jerry Betters. It looks exactly like the GE Mark II. And it was kept quiet because we were spying on Russia. They couldn't divulge that's what was going on, and it had that atomic generator in it. So really every aspect of it matches up to this spy satellite. So, the way I look at it now, I don't believe that it was a extraterrestrial craft. I think it could have been some sort of hybrid of the Bell, the Nazi Bell, because we had 20 years to try to perfect that, and the Nazi Bell kind of looked like that acorn-shaped, and it looked very similar to the GE Mark II reentry vehicle. So it was either that spy satellite or it was a Nazi Bell project that we were working on. I don't believe that it was extraterrestrial, and that doesn't make me any friends around here, because everybody over here wants to believe that it was an ET craft and there was an alien in it, and we're not finding that to be true. I think we've explained it scientifically, every aspect. Also, one of the witnesses saw a 5-pointed star inside a circle. When you research the 1960s, that was the Army and Air Force symbol, was the 5-pointed star, and it was inside of a circle, and that's what was described around the band of it. So, unfortunately, I think we explained that one, but a lot of people are upset about it.
Well, you know what? UFOs and ETs make the story a hell of a lot more sexier, John, than what you're saying. No offense.
Yeah. Well, let me give you a good example. It's something I discovered about this entire field is we wrote the research paper on it, and we sent it out, and we actually broke the story on Coast to Coast AM with Connie Willis, right? Now, the year before, I was on Coast to Coast with George Knapp talking about my book, An Alternative History of Mankind, which was a novel, it was really an ancient alien novel of how they had been here. I sold 300 books in 1 week after being on Coast to Coast. So we break this story, which should have been big news, and, and I track it. I sold 3 books. 3 books by breaking the Kecksburg story. So it really told me that people were interested in entertainment. They didn't want to hear a good scientific explanation for any of the cases, and they basically ignored it. So it became like a social experiment, you know. If I could make up a good story, like a lot of the people that come on, you know, maybe your show and Coast to Coast and others, they're fabricating, but if I can make up a really good story, that's what people want to hear. But when you actually prove something wasn't an ET or wasn't Bigfoot, you know, and look, I want it to be ET. I want it to be the spacecraft. But I think we proved that it wasn't, and nobody was interested. Matter of fact, the Tribune Review here in Pittsburgh, the Post-Gazette printed the story. The Tribune Review refused to print it. And when I called them, they said, well, this would hurt the Kecksburg Festival. That's how they fund the fire department. I said, look, I understand that, but you're telling me you're not going to print the truth because of a fundraiser. And that's the way it went. So it really showed me a lot about what this field's about, what the people are really interested in, and how a lot of the politics work.
But to play devil's advocate for a moment here, you have to understand the people's side of things, too, where they've seen what happened at Roswell. They don't know what happened at San Augustine at the exact same time. They know there was a cover-up, and all of a sudden it's whitewashed. And now we have this other incident in a more populous area, and yes, you know what, the way you're putting it, I tend to lean with your side here, rather than an acorn-shaped UFO with one spaceman running around the forest. Yeah. But, you know, I could see where they're like, okay, here's this John Ventre guy, he's with MUFON, there's all sorts of stories about MUFON out there, and, you know, whether or not they're infiltrated by the government or not, this is just another government cover-up. So you could see where they're maybe a little bit jaded, let alone the community itself, which does raise money for a fundraiser here.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, all I could say is read the research paper. We answered every aspect of the crash. You know, it makes total perfect sense. There really was no aspect of it that I couldn't answer. Other than, you know, they said that somebody tapped on the top, one of the Army officers, and something tapped back. And then there's the story of the actual craft being at Wright-Patterson, and this truck driver, you know, saw a reptilian hand, the body laying on a gurney with 3 fingers, the hand laying off. You know, really, I mean, you're a truck driver delivering bricks. You went in there, you saw this in a secure facility, and they just told you to go home and don't tell anybody. I think that truck driver would have ended up in Lake Erie somewhere, and you would have never seen him again. So, you know, there's no substantiation to that part, and that's really the only aspect that we can't explain was, you know, this alien on a gurney, which I don't know if that was a true story or not.
I have a question from Eric in the Spaced Out Radio chat room on Spreaker. John, do you think there is any truth to the possibility that the Kecksburg device might have been a back-engineered Nazi project called the Bell? I know you touched on it a little bit, but can you go into a little bit more detail?
Yeah, I think it's very possible that that's what it was, and you know, maybe it wasn't the spy satellite, even though there were so many aspects of the spy satellite, like the glowing green and all the things that I described really matched up to what it was capable of doing. But, the Nazi Bell was Hitler in 1940s. We got that technology in 1945, so we had 20 years to work on it. And so it could have been something that we were trying to perfect. The Nazi Bell looked very similar to the Kecksburg acorn, very similar. You know, if anything, it was a little more stocky and wide. It wasn't as pointy on top, you know, like even the GE Mark II was, a little more pointier on top. But I think there's a very good chance that it could have been the Nazi Bell, and we had, we're trying to perfect it with anti-gravity, and that's what came in and crashed. But, either way, they had to get in there and recover it. So we know, the Air Force and Blue Book lied that they didn't track it on radar. And yet you're telling me Canada tracked it, you didn't track it, and you were there in 40 minutes. They lied about having only 3 people there. There was almost 30 people there between the three branches of the service, and they lied that it was a meteor. I mean, show me another meteor crash that you sent the Army and the Air Force in to recover a meteor. So, they lied across the board, and there were cover-ups on just about every UFO case. But if it was the Bell or it was a spy satellite, like I said, this followed the Gary Powers U-2. It had to be kept quiet, and they had to go in and get that atomic generator out. You know what I find really interesting is there were hundreds of these launches of the GE Mark II. They all crashed in the ocean. They're on the bottom of the ocean with atomic generators in them. Nobody has ever questioned that. They only recovered the camera system, and the actual recovery reentry vehicle, like an Apollo mission, would crash into the ocean but sink, and it had an atomic generator in it. But hey, that's the military.
Why do you think the military took it away on tarps or covered in tarps? Was that just to prevent radiation? Because a tarp wouldn't be that thick.
Yeah, I think it was just so people didn't see exactly what it was. Whether it was the Bell because of the shape or it was the GE Mark II. I mean, you didn't want people describing it, but Jerry Betters had made the only notarized drawing of it, which is that, triangular-shaped capsule shape, which is exactly what the GE Mark II looks like. He saw it before they covered up with the tarp. But, you got to understand, if this was the spy satellite, they could not allow that to get out after what just happened with Gary Powers. And the Soviet Union was our mortal enemy back then in the 60s.
What about reporter John Murphy? He said he was there at the time when it happened at WHJB, and he arrived on the scene before authorities did, because his eyewitness testimony is much more different than what you were saying.
Yeah, well, I believe he was there. I believe they took his film from him. I believe they told him a different version of what to say, which really depressed him. I don't know that he was killed a couple of years later in California when he got hit by a car. I don't know that he was murdered, although his wife does say she believes it has something to do with it. But yeah, I mean, you could call that a Men in Black visit, which was probably the Air Force people in suits. Because, matter of fact, in my research at Kecksburg, I found a letter in the MUFON archives for Pennsylvania from James Oberg, who said that the Air Force would routinely hang up their uniforms, get in suits and ties, and go visit witnesses. So, I believe all of that did happen.
So it was no Men in Black, quote, end quote, visitation. It was more probably what James Oberg said, which was they visited in suits.
Air Force people to tell Murphy what he was going to say and what he wasn't going to say, and to take his film from him. But the whole Men in Black thing, and we talked about this recently. I did with Nick Redfern. When you look at and we're getting off track here a little bit, but when you look at the Men in Black, the original case of Albert Bender, and Nick Redfern agrees with me on this, that was a paranormal encounter. What he described there was not E.T. The original Men in Black encounter with Albert Bender was really an occult, paranormal, demonic type encounter with the smell of sulfur and all of that. You read his book and his whole description. So you got three different Men in Black, and Nick Redfern just wrote a book, Women in Black. You have the Men in Black that's described, and he even describes them, Albert Bender, as these ghoulish creatures with shiny eyes. That's one version. You got the version of the E.T. type that are almost robotic, kind of tan skin, wearing glasses and all of that. And then you've got the Air Force guys putting black suits on with fedoras and going out interviewing and threatening witnesses. So there's really three versions of the Men in Black. And I think that Murphy got visited by the Air Force version.
We got time for a couple questions here, so we got about 5-6 minutes before we have to go to break. Shar in the Spaced Out Radio chat room on Spreaker is asking, do you believe, John, that all triangular-shaped UFOs are really ours?
Well, I wouldn't say all. We had a huge UFO wave across Pennsylvania in 2008. At the time, I was not familiar with the TR-3B. But when you look at a bulk of those cases, there were at least 100. We had about 350, 400 cases in a short period of time. There was at least 100 that described a triangular craft with 3 lights on it, one at each of the 3 corners. And, I look back at it now and I say, well, how many of those were really the TR-3B? Was that a government project that we saw? But, one of my guys went and tracked, orange orbs and that. And, he found that there's a base in Lake Erie. There's one off of Miami, one off of Tampa, one off of L.A. And the case we had, it seemed to come out of Lake Erie. There were witnesses in Eastlake, Ohio, Wheeling, West Virginia, Pittsburgh State College, and then the bulk of them in Bucks County, north of Philly. And it seemed to go out into the ocean, and I believe it just went up. It looped around Nova Scotia, whatever, came back over the deserted part of Canada and back into Lake Erie. So I don't know what that was. I don't know if that's an ET. There's probably an ET base there in Lake Erie. But some of them, I think we have that technology now, and I think the TR-3B is real, the Aurora project, and it's ours. So, how do you differentiate between the two? Any triangular craft seen prior to 1980, that had to be ET. We didn't have one.
I have seen 2 black triangles in my time here, and they are quite a sight, I can tell you that. And the way that they were both absolutely silent was just mesmerizing. Like, you just can't take your eyes off of that when you see this giant triangular black aircraft. Now, the ones I saw, the one undercarriage was absolutely all lit up, which makes me wonder if it was a true TR-3B or not. But the other one was way too massive, way too massive to be anything close to human technology.
Well, when I was on the Anderson Cooper show, he tried to say that the government don't have any secrets and all. And I said, wait a second, Anderson. The stealth technology we kept quiet for 12 years. That's 1976 technology that we brought out in 1988. So if stealth was the thing that we wanted to show the public in 1976, what comes after that? And I think it's got to be the TR-3B. I think that we have this anti-gravitational craft that was probably tested in the 80s, and that's the thing that took the place of the stealth aircraft. I'm convinced of that.
I fully agree with you, because you just don't retire the SR-71, which doesn't have any problems with it as a flight system, and just put it to pasture for no reason, unless you have something bigger, better, faster, and much better.
Yeah, I've noticed a pattern of the government keeping stuff quiet for about a dozen years. And I'll give you another example. In 2012, I was watching the news, and they showed a remote control drone space shuttle landing on an aircraft carrier. That was in December of 2012. And if you could look it up, it actually has been in use since 1999. So they first used it in 99. They showed it to the public in 2012. It went over everybody's head. I think it's the X-37B is what it's called. It's only about 15 feet in size. That particular mission was out there 3 years, from 2009 to 2012, and it landed. They never told you what it was doing in space for 3 years. So that's why the president shut down the space shuttle program, because he knew we already had the remote control drone space shuttles that were out there. That went over everybody's head, and it still doesn't seem to register with people. They seem to be more interested in who's going to be on Dancing with Stars.
That is important. That is important on which, actors trying to revive their career by Dancing with the Stars.
Yeah, and who they hook up with.
Well, exactly. We only got about 30 seconds here before we have to hop out for a break. So John Ventre is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. You can find any of his books, especially An Alternative History of Mankind and Case for UFOs, on Amazon.com, Amazon.ca, any major bookstore. These are the books to get if you want to learn a little bit more. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott. We'll be back right after this.
Looking for news beyond the mainstream news? Head to spacedoutradio.com and check out the SOR Spacewire. This is Spaced Out Radio's Eric Markham, news director for the SOR Spacewire. Daily, I will bring you intriguing stories and outlandish reports from what's going on around the world. UFO sightings, paranormal activity, conspiracies, alternative health, and so much more. And if you have news, email me at news@spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with U4Cop. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com.
Greetings and salutations, space travelers, from the Chronicles of the Unknown team.
What is Chronicles of the Unknown? I keep hearing about this thing.
It's a new paranormal reality TV show based right here in beautiful British Columbia, Canada. Follow our team as we uncover claims of activity on the Caribou Gold Rush Trail. You can also follow us here every third Monday, where two members of our team will be available to answer your questions.
Have you ever wondered about those weird and strange creatures people have reported throughout history? Do you wonder if those stories are real? Me too, and that's why I started Cryptopia.us. Hey, this is Rob Morphy, crypto historian. Join me once a month on Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott, where we will get into the odd and bizarre reports, from the Dover Demon to hairy hominids and everything in between. I will break down what people like you and me are seeing at spacedoutradio.com.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
From British Columbia to Northern California, Pacific North Weird has Cascadia covered. Check out our feature videos at spacedoutradio.com, where I, Vincent Zunza, and my super sleuth partner Alexandra Sullivan track down the weird and strange stories from around the Pacific Northwest. From Bigfoot to Mel's Hole and everything in between. This is what makes life exciting. So why report the normal when we can report the Pacific North Weird? Right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Oh, there's only one way to rock. Loud and proud. In high definition. Radio 702 rocks. Las Vegas.
Have you ever had an extraterrestrial experience? One you just couldn't explain? Well, maybe I can help. Hello, I am Samantha Mullet. On the second Tuesday of each month, I will join Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio to bring a human aspect to ET contact. It's something I've lived with my entire life, and I'd love to help you understand. Let's share our experiences. The ET Experience, the second Tuesday of each month, only on Spaced Out Radio.
Hi there, this is Jolene with Reveal Reiki and Readings, and I want you to relax. Let me help you chill out and get in touch with your body, mind, and soul. In this busy world, sometimes we need to let go, and this is where I can help. Visit my website, rivuletrr.wix.com/rivuletrr&r.
Every Saturday and Sunday night, as Dave Scott wanders aimlessly in the wilderness, you can come hang out with me, James Tyson, in Spaced Out Weekend. Starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, I'll take you along as we talk with some of the best experts in their fields. SpacedOutRadio.com is the place to find us. So sit down, relax, put your feet up. Enjoy the topics like the paranormal, supernatural, intuitiveness, and so much more. Hope to see you there.
Hi there, this is your psychic medium, Joanna, and I would love it if you would join us every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. With host James Tyson, we'll bring you personal psychic messages on two mediums and a large. Questions about love, life, career changes. We would love it if you would come and join us live. Call in and listen in for the experience. Allow us to open the doors to your other side. Two mediums and a large, heard only on Spaced Out Weekend at spacedoutradio.com.
Would you like to become one of our space travelers? All you have to do is click on the Space Travelers icon at spacedoutradio.com. For only $5 a month, you can get access to some great prizes, as well as private monthly shows, newsletters, and a members-only section on our website. Become a space traveler today.
Do you have a topic or a guest that you'd like to hear on Spaced Out Radio? Let us know at spacedoutradio.com, where you can sign up to become a Space Traveler member today. Or you can find us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on our Facebook page, Spaced Out Radio Show. Welcome back to the second hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Good to have you with us. If you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember, Revolution Radio is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Do us a favor, take the time and donate today. If you're listening on the Spaced Out Radio chat room on Spreaker or the SOR Space Travelers on Facebook, good to have you along for the ride as we do this show 7 nights a week starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time. Tomorrow night on the show, the crypto historian, Robert Morphy, is back from Cryptopia US, making his monthly appearance tomorrow night to talk about some strange, weird creatures throughout North America's history. Remember, if you want to follow us on Twitter, you can do so at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, I can be followed at Dave Scott, SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show, for our archives, and our website is spacedoutradio.com. While there, you can check up on our weird news with the SOR Spacewire by Eric Markham, read up on our latest blogs, check out our music page by the Guitar God, formerly of Guns N' Roses, Ron Bumblefoot THAL, who takes care of all of our music, and you could join for just $5 a month, the SOR Space Travelers Club. We give you a heck of a lot more than just access to our archives. Tonight we are talking with distinguished author and Pennsylvania MUFON head director, John Ventre. John, welcome back.
Yeah, thanks. Hey, can I make 2 points?
Please do.
Yeah. One thing I want to say is, we talked about Kecksburg, and I don't believe that was extraterrestrial. But I do want to say that I wrote the book, The Case for UFOs, about a year ago. It's everything I know to prove UFOs are real. It's all the documents. It's all the quotes of the important people. It's some of the best photos, and it's a timeline. I even put together like 250 bullet points in a chapter called Do You Know, Should You Know? So, for anybody listening that says, well, he must be a debunker because he don't believe in Kecksburg. No. Read my book. It proves UFOs are real. And also the new book I got coming out in a couple of weeks will prove that demonology is real. And the other point I wanted to make was we mentioned the Hangar 1 TV show. And, and I hear those rumors that, well, MUFON's infiltrated this and that. Well, let me tell you something. If you watch those episodes, I clearly believe that show pitted MUFON against the government and the military, especially the episodes on space weapons and underground bases. So I don't know how anybody can really say, well, you watch the show and say MUFON is infiltrated. If anything, MUFON proved they weren't by doing that show. Now, whether that had anything to do with the show going off, I wonder, because the story told to us by the History Channel, in my mind, doesn't add up. But okay, go ahead.
Not a problem. We do have to mention the SOR Space Travelers password for tonight. If you are a member of the Space Travelers, Bill Cardwell has set the password. Otherworldly is your password for tonight. Otherworldly. He actually made one that I could pronounce. Otherworldly. So make sure you use it right if you're a member of the SOR Space Travelers. Thank you, Bill, for doing that. You have a lot of conferences coming up, John. You put on a few in the Pennsylvania area as well. How is the attendance when it comes to these conferences? Are people still going? Is the message still getting out to new people?
Yeah, we do 3 conferences: Erie, Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh, and Philly. And the Pittsburgh is actually in Greensburg, and the Philly is actually in Bucks County, where we had all those cases. But, we've grown. The Philly and the Pittsburgh has gotten bigger. We have 300 people consistently attend in the Pittsburgh and just under 200 in Philly. And Erie has dropped off a little bit. We started off at 200 the first 2 years. Now, the last 2 years, we've had about 150 people. So, this is the way we get the word out that UFOs are real. This is how we build our membership. We're one of the few states that continues to get new members to MUFON, new investigators. I got about 180 members in Pennsylvania, 40 investigators, and we do it with the conferences, and we probably charge the least amount of money of any conference you go to. These are first-rate conferences. You get 5 speakers, and it's usually $29 in Erie and Pittsburgh. Philly's $35, but you're getting a cocktail hour. You're getting all these other things, and probably half the price of what the big conferences charge. But we're not trying to make a ton of money. We make a few grand, which funds our investigations. We buy some equipment. And I think they're great. They're as good as any other conference. And you go to MUFONPA.com for those. And we have Philly coming up October 28th and 29th. We do a real nice cocktail hour with the speakers on Friday night. And Pittsburgh is November 19th. We got Stanton Friedman. This is cool. Stanton Friedman and Kathy Martin are coming in. Stanton Friedman started his UFO career in Pittsburgh. He worked at Westinghouse. He did his first interview on KDKA. He did his first lecture at Carnegie Mellon, and he also lectured at St. Vincent's College out here in Latrobe. So he got his UFO start when he was working out here in the Pittsburgh area. So that's kind of cool.
Well, he's a proud Canadian citizen now, so we're stealing him from you.
Yeah, you can have him.
I want to get to some audience questions here because they're kind of stacking up. Claudia in the SOR Space Travelers Room on Facebook is asking, what government official or military official do you know of, John, that has come forward with evidence admitting aliens are real?
Well, I think one of the good ones was Governor Symington. Unfortunately, he lied in 1997 with Phoenix Lights, and he waited 10 years to 2007 to come out and say he lied, and that he actually saw that huge triangular craft that blocked out the stars. So, I mean, there you have a real good, but he needed to do it at the time. Just think of how different that would have been in 97 if the governor held that press conference and he said, I saw it also, and I don't know what that was. You would have had to have launched an investigation, a real investigation. He blew it for the field. And there's a Symington connection here that no one else has put together. I came upon it in my reading of older books and stuff. think about James Forrestal, the original guy on MJ-12, right? Who drove him to Bethesda Hospital where they put him in there for the breakdown and then later threw him out the window? It was Stuart Symington, the cousin of Governor Symington. So there's a connection there in the Symington family of really covering this stuff up.
Do you think Fylth Symington came out so many years later because maybe he just wanted to get his name out there again, get some popularity back, get that 15 minutes of fame since his political career was over?
I think he just had his conscience. I think he wanted to do what was right. You had that Frances Barwood who was a councilwoman, and, he kind of crushed her with the things he did. I think he came out really to tell the truth. I think it was his conscience. But, when you do it 10 years later, it has no effect. It needed to happen in 1997, not 2007.
How much do you think during the Phoenix Lights that the ball was dropped on that? You mentioned that it should have been done at that point. I think we all agree. The foolishness of Symington bringing in a human in an alien gray costume in handcuffs to make a joke out of it. I think that's where the media really turned its back on this whole topic as well from that point forward. What do you think should have happened at that point?
Well, I mean, he should have come out and made the statement that he saw it also. And there was 10,000 witnesses to that, and that he was going to get the Attorney General of Colorado, and they were going to launch an investigation, and that he's making an inquiry with his congressperson and senator into what this was in our airspace. But, people also confused. There were two different things that happened there. You had the mountain area where they saw those lights, and that's the thing that they tried to explain away as being flares. But, I've seen Lynn Katai's presentation twice. I've had her out here to speak to our Philly group. And, she shows you flares dropping, and then she shows you steady film that she took from her balcony, and those lights aren't going anywhere. They're there for 10 minutes, and then you show pictures of flares dropping. But people don't understand. That was part one, but part two was this huge black triangle that was maybe 20 miles away, just moving across the sky. People would look up, and all of a sudden all the stars would disappear, and they'd see the silhouette of this black triangle that was like gigantic, like football fields in size. So there were two different cases there. And I think, next year it turns out to be the 20th anniversary, and I think I'm going to bring Lynn Katai back to speak at our Philly conference.
Do you think Fylth Symington was told to shut up?
I think, yeah. I think that was very typical of what he did to make fun of it with the costume and stuff. That's exactly what the CIA would have done. I think somebody contacted him. He had to do something. They obviously would know he's doing a press conference, and I think that whole thing was staged. I think he was saying, look, you're the governor. You can't have the public panicking. If you come out and say you saw it and this is extraterrestrial, you're going to have rioting. You're going to have panic on your hands. How are you going to handle that? You know what it costs to bring the National Guard in? And what if they riot and start burning stores down? And I think that's the line that was fed to him, and he followed and said, yeah, I got to do what's best to keep the situation calm. And that's what he says years later, is he wanted to keep it calm, but he wasn't truthful.
Shar in the Spaced Out Radio chat room on Spreaker is asking, she's wondering if the government is using people's desires for extraterrestrial contact as a distraction for what they are doing.
Well, it's funny. Nick Redfern said to me, because I'm always searching for the string theory of the unexplained that explains everything. And I actually do a radio show once a month, and it's called The String Theory of the Unexplained. But he said to me, John, don't look for one explanation for everything. But I'm still searching for that one that's really going to explain everything. But what we got is a combination of different factors. Some of it is our government. Some of it, we're seeing those projects. Some of it is extraterrestrial. or it could be ultra-terrestrial. I think more people now believe that this is interdimensional than actually coming from outer space. And, I've spent the last 2 years looking at theology, demonology, hauntings, and if you're going to say something is interdimensional, then you're really getting into the area of angels and fallen angels. And I'm convinced, personally, the gray alien abduction, that's not ET. I've looked at these abductions. What happens with the grays late at night, 3 in the morning, falls right in line with the demonic encounters. So you don't get one explanation for this.
Eric in the SOR Space Travelers has a question for you. He is asking, John, how many extraterrestrial species do you believe are here or are visiting as your research has shown?
Okay. I'm going to give the safest answer I can on that, and I can prove it, is that there are 4 or 5. And the way I can prove that is from 1968 to 1970, for 3 years, the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs had a chapter in their physics book. It was chapter 33. That chapter was on UFOs. And right in that chapter, it says they have been coming here for as long as 47,000 years, and there are 3 or 4, I don't remember now if they said 3 or 4 or 4 or 5 different species. And, when you think about it, what do people report? They report the Nordics, right? The Greys, the Reptilians, and the Insectoids. So there's your 4. And I think the Nordics are very similar. Obviously, they're very similar to us. So, but, it depends how you look at it. When you say how many species, I think that Blue Water Project said there was 176 different species. But technically, every planet is really, that has life on it, would be a different species. And I think life is abundant in space. NASA says there's 8.8 billion Earth-like planets alone in the Milky Way galaxy. So we could have, let's say there's 1 billion planets with some sort of life form on it. You basically would have 1 billion species. But I think there's 4 or 5 different types. And that would be my opinion. And I cite the Air Force as that source, and they never lie, so it has to be.
Oh, of course. I mean, why would they tell the truth on something like this?
But think about it. They taught that course at the Air Force Academy to their cadets on UFOs. It's one of the greatest reads that you can have. They give you all the older cases, the Kelly Hopkins case, different cases of UFOs proving that it's real and saying they've been here 47,000 years and different types. It's like a UFO. Well, it was a UFO 101, telling their cadets this is real. When you go up in your fighter jets, you may encounter this. And there were 2 versions of it too. There was the first one that came out in 68 and 69 that had all that information, and then after Project Blue Book ended in December of 69, they went back and edited that chapter down about halfway, took out a lot of that information, but still left it there. And then at the end of 1970, they pulled that chapter totally out of the physics book.
What is your opinion of the Kingman, Arizona crash?
I would say I don't know a lot about that. I saw a presentation in, I think it was Cincinnati at the MUFON Symposium, and I know the guy that was presenting it, he thought he had broke the case, and, I saw a lot of different holes in what he was trying to explain that happened at that one. But I'll be honest with you, I don't have a good feel for all the details on that one. I think that one hit a mountaintop, clipped it, and came down, but I'm really not very versed on Kingman.
Eric has a question in the SOR Space Travelers Club for you. He is saying, John, how do you explain Jesse Ventura's episode about Skinwalker Ranch and Robert Bigelow Industries and them coming up with MUFON?
Yeah, I read the book, The Hunt for the Skinwalker. I think that those type of portals and areas are real. And like I said, I've had paranormal activity my whole life, and it culminated just recently with a real infestation, oppression, attack upon me. Incredible. So this stuff is real. This interdimensional is real. Now, the stuff that's brought up about Bigelow, the way I viewed it, and, I was a state director at the time, and I knew a lot about what was going on. Bigelow, he had owned, I think, Motel 6. He sold it, and then he got into Bigelow Research with the aerospace. He wants to build really a hotel in space where people can go, and he makes those pods right now that NASA buys from him, and he creates those, and that's what they're going to build, like a space station. And he wants to build a hotel out in space. So his goal was he would fund our research, which was great, because right now everything comes out of our pocket. If we get a good case, I've got to drive 30 miles, 40 miles. What he did was he created a whole program where he'd put you up in a hotel, he'd reimburse your gas. The only thing he wanted in exchange was to read the report first. What he was after was the technology. Good descriptions, and obviously if there was a crash, and he actually had his own other group of scientists on hand ready if there was a crash or something that he wanted to assist. He wanted to get his hands on the technology, because think about it. You look at what's going on, Virgin Atlantic, they have their project to go into space. Bigelow does. There's a few others, the private industry won that contest over NASA, let's say, to get out into space. If he could get his hands on that technology, then there's billions of dollars in that to be able to take people up, to a space station. You can look at the Earth, you can look at the moon. That's what he was trying to do, and he was spending money. For us, it was great, because instead of coming out of our pocket, here he is reimbursing you. You drove 200 miles, you get your money back. You stayed in a hotel, you get $79 back. I thought it was great. I think it's a shame that it went belly up. And from there, he used his influence with the, I think it was the FAA, where they actually listed the Bigelow Aerospace Group as the people to contact for a UFO sighting that came into either the Air Force or the FAA. They would send that information to Bigelow, which, to me raised some eyebrows. Why didn't MUFON or NUFORC get those cases? But, Bigelow was throwing his money and his influence around. But the whole thing with him was to get an understanding, or actually get the technology. And if he could do that, then, he's, I was going to say Donald Trump, but he probably already has more money than Donald Trump. I mean, he's the number one aerospace guy. That's what it was about.
So what do you think is happening at the Skinwalker Ranch then? I know it's a little bit off topic, but considering MUFON being a part of what Robert Bigelow does, and the Skinwalker Ranch is owned by Bigelow, there's a lot of stories about what is actually happening there, from alien technology to any type of, strange beings running around. What do you think is happening there?
Yeah, well, let me first say Bigelow has no involvement with MUFON now, and he hasn't for, I'd say it's probably been 4 years, if not 5. When that project fell apart, he pulled away from MUFON. There's no, and I've seen MUFON's income tax return. I was on their board for 3 years, which was after the Bigelow era. There's no involvement with Bigelow right now with MUFON. As far as that ranch goes, yeah, I think that is real. I mean, you look at the American Indians, they have always had stories. All of the legends and all of the cultures, no matter what country you go to, what continent, these stories have always existed. And, I have a totally different view. That's why I say now that, when you try to explain stuff and you think you got it figured out, it turns out it doesn't apply to you and there's something else. I happen to right now believe in this interdimensional, in these spirits. I fully believe that the fallen angel, I believe that's 100% true. I really do, after what I experienced at the end of last year. So could there be a portal? Could there be malevolent interdimensional entities, things that come and go? Yeah, absolutely. I was watching that Penny Dreadful show. I don't know if you ever watched that on Showtime. What a great show. And, they talked about vampires, and I never viewed it this way, but they said the vampire is basically a fallen angel. And I never really looked at it that way. It's the cousin. It's the brother of Satan, But I viewed, all of that malevolence, that interdimensional, that unseen world. I know, I don't believe, I know that that's real.
I have a question from Claudia in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Claudia asks, John, have you ever talked to David Jacobs about the aliens that are controlling us? If so, what cases do you know of that have evidence of this?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, Jacobs is on his tour right now for 3 conferences. He's done 2 of them. He did Philly and Erie, and he'll be doing Pittsburgh next year. I agree with the bulk of what Jacobs talks about, where he talks about the alien agenda and the hybrids, and he now calls them hybrids because they are, let's say, 95% human and 5% alien. They're mostly human, but they're still controllable. And, it's interesting. With the Erie conference back in April, the night before, we sat down. It was Friday night. All the speakers were there. Nick Redfern, Stan Gordon, myself, Jacobs. There was a few other people there, some MUFON people. And we had a discussion on this whole demonology, interdimensional, UFOs, what really is going on. And one of the things I found interesting is Jacobs said he's done like 1,000 regressive sessions on 150 people. He's never had a malevolent entity with these people. And, like Stan and Nick and I almost fell out of our chair. I said, are you kidding me? You've never encountered a demonic entity in any of your cases. And he said no. And, Nick Redfern and I and others, we all said, well, we've come across cases and different people and other people have come across. So, one of the things, I still question what the agenda is. My thinking, and again, this is another area that people don't agree with me, but, I started in this field with end-time prophecy, and it's kind of interesting how I've come full circle. I went from studying end-time prophecy to write a novel, to UFOs, to demonology, to being attacked by something malevolent and invisible, and then I'm back here trying to explain everything that's going on. I don't know. I think Jacob's research is correct. I think that something is going on. He's got plenty of documentation. We differ on, I think, who the source of this program is. Is it extraterrestrials trying to take over the planet by hybrids and now hybrids, or is there a bigger question, more falls under theology and religion, and that these things are trying to change us so we're no longer in the image of our Creator and really prevent the return of Jesus, who I know for a fact is real. And again, nobody wants to hear that, but I know what I experienced. And, Joe Jordan is a MUFON. He was a section director in Florida. He's now the South Korea MUFON country director. I'm going to have dinner with him next week at the MUFON Symposium. He was the guy that came upon case after case of abduction where the person was able to stop the gray alien abduction through the name of Jesus Christ. And he was stunned by that. And he found 400 cases like that. And he said, why would aliens back off when you use a religious figure's name? And I've read a lot of books now on this. Even in other countries, whoever the religious figure is that you believe in, the good guy, will stop an alien abduction and a demonic attack. And now I've read a lot of books where you read this. So I tell you, in my mind, my thinking has changed. I believe that like I said, the fallen angel thing, the interdimensional malevolence, I know that that's real. So I don't know if Jacobs is correct in the alien hybrid program or it's a Nephilim program to change us in the image of our Creator.
Claudia has another question for you in the SOR Space Travelers Club. She is asking, John, have you viewed a picture of an alien that you feel was real or any video that is of a real alien?
No, I can't really say. I mean, there's a couple of good ones out there. There's that real old black and white one that was supposed to be the alien that was, at Roswell taking Area 51. I mean, a lot of them look really good. One of them that didn't look good was the Stan Romanek alien that was popping up at his windowsill there. I think Factor Faked on the Sci-Fi Channel looked into that and kind of reenacted it and showed that it was just a prop, And Stan, by the way, was supposed to go to trial yesterday for his pornography charges, and that got delayed till March of 2017. So he's had that delayed for 3 years now. He was charged Valentine's Day of 2014, and he's going to go to trial in March of 2017.
I'm still a little baffled by the whole Stan Romanek thing, and we've talked about it a couple of times on this show in regards to whether or not he was set up or not because of the footage that he was getting, and very, very much of that footage seemed very logical and real as far as his stories becoming a little outlandish as they grew and became more tall tales. That's to be debated and desired by whoever the listener is. Do you think that he actually did what he did, or allegedly did what he did, or do you think that it was a setup? Because we know the government's not really into killing people like that anymore, but they sure can shut you up very quickly by putting something on your computer.
Yeah, I have to, and I've had this discussion with a lot of people. There are people I'm friends with that say that he's set up, and others say that that he's psychotic or whatever. But I can only relate to a couple of instances, personal instances I had with the guy, and I'll give you a couple examples. I think he did this. I think psychologically there's something wrong with this guy. Alejandro Rojas said he was at his house and he saw orbs. Okay, so I believe him. He has orbs in and out of his house. Factor Faked proved that the alien at the window was a prop. It wasn't real. I'll take you to an interview, and it's in my book, actually, The Case for UFOs, where he's on Skype doing an interview, and I can't think of the name of the show right now. And he's sitting there, and he didn't realize it was a widescreen Skype interview. He's got a thumb drive in one hand and like a pen cap in the other, and you see his hand just throw it up in the air. He thought he was off screen, and it hit the wall behind him. He said, "What was that? What was that? Paranormal activity?" And then he did it again with the other hand, and he threw it, and it's out there. You can find it. Look up Stan Romanek fraud. I can't think of the name of the show, but it's in my book, Case for UFOs. So I called his publisher at that point, the guy in New Jersey. I said, "How do you explain that?" And he goes, "John, I can't." I said, "I don't know." He said, "I don't know what he did. Why did he do that?" It was clearly faked activity. So that's one that I lost a lot of belief in Stan, and he was arrested like a month later. Was when those charges came out, right after he faked that interview. The other thing was he was supposed to come here to Pittsburgh to speak at a conference, and he, of course, said I had to fly his wife Lisa in. So now I got 2 plane tickets for $765. Well, he cancels on me 30 days out. He said he had Lyme's disease and was having his spleen out. I said, okay, so he cancels. Of course, he never comes back. I lost the money on those tickets. But the disturbing thing was, what I found out was 2 weeks later, he wasn't in the hospital. He was in New Jersey at a millionaire's fundraiser trying to get funds for himself. So he didn't want to make 2 trips to the East Coast. He dumped the Pittsburgh conference to go to this dinner at this guy. He's actually in Bucks County, and he got funding from 2 guys there. One guy gave him a Grand Cherokee, and the other guy paid his electric bills. So I don't have a lot of faith in Stan Romanek. I think he will be convicted come March, and I don't think he was set up.
His wife seems to be sticking by him, though.
Well, she should. She's his wife, and I think she believes. I think she believes him 100%, and her belief is that he got set up.
Well, you know what? I think he's damned if he does and damned if he doesn't, because no matter what, even if you're proven innocent, you still wear that title for the rest of your life, and publicly he will never be accepted again. So he is.
Yeah. You know what? The other thought. I had one other thought on this, is that I remember at the time when he canceled on our conference, he was not able to get, nobody was booking him anymore. He was hot for a while. He was supposed to have a movie come out on his experiences, which fell through. And then all of a sudden, he can't get anybody to invite him to come as a speaker. So I kind of said to myself, did he set this up himself? But let me tell you, if you picked that crime as a way of getting yourself attention, you picked the wrong topic. You know, that was a thought I had. I don't know if he may have done it deliberately to get himself attention, but if he did, he certainly picked the wrong offense to use.
Well, the way I've looked at that topic is this. He did enough challenging of the government and trying to make the United States government and all the alphabet agencies look like fools in the public eye that it would make very much sense to me, a lot of sense to me, if they finally said, you know what, we've had enough of you, peon. We're going to just destroy your credibility right now. You know, we'll just add this to your computer, and we'll tip off the FBI, and Bob's your uncle, you're under arrest. That's a good, quick way to shut him up. Because in the end, I'm still not convinced that he was in that. I've never met the man. I've talked to people who know him. That's as far as it goes. But from my own study into it, I think he was set up. But, and the main thing is, I don't think his wife could be that naive. But on the flip side, if he did do it, he's going to get his just desserts.
Yeah. Well, it's very easy to do. If they wanted to set somebody up, they could set me up. I mean, they could put it on my computer, and how do I defend it? I'm done. It would be very easy to do. But I also and I said this in so many interviews. I don't believe the CIA worries one bit about ufologists. They know they got this licked. They know that they killed the UFO. Nobody takes UFO serious. The only encounters I ever had on radio, I had a helicopter over my house, was when I spoke of the Yellowstone supervolcano. 4 times the signal was brought down. Twice the show went off the air. It was twice on the Kevin Smith show that was brought down. He didn't lose reception. And just, I think it was last January, we were talking about it again, the end time prophecy, how I got started. We got into the Yellowstone supervolcano. There was a helicopter hovering over my house for about 5 minutes. You could hear it on the radio show. And even the guy like you was saying, what is that noise? I said, listen. And you could hear the helicopter above my house. So the Yellowstone supervolcano, by the way, is real. They thought it was going to blow in 2006. If you think, because the ground was swelling up, 6 feet at a time, and you think about what Obama did, 1.8 billion hollow-tip shells, all those coffins that were ordered. They made a grid of detention camps really around the country. They thought that thing was going to blow, and that's what it was about. But the only problem I ever had was when I talked about the Yellowstone supervolcano. I have never had a problem talking about UFOs because nobody takes it serious anymore. And that's the fault of the CIA, the media, and our colleges and universities.
We actually got hit a couple of weeks ago, back on the 3rd, I guess it would have been, almost 2 weeks ago. It'll be 2 weeks ago tomorrow night, with James Fetzer, when he was talking about the Boston bombings and the 2 brothers, how he believes they were set up. All of a sudden, his line on Skype went absolutely dead and shut right off. He tried calling into the show. I tried calling him. Thank goodness I had his cell phone number, because that's how we ended up getting back in touch. And we had to he must have said something that riled someone up who was listening in, because we all know they're recording all of these radio shows that are going on. You know, they want
absolutely. That's why I said at the beginning of this, if there was a real investigative journalist out there looking into this whole Black Lives Matter thing, you're going to find there's a group that's trying to cause race riots and tensions and bring the country down, just like it makes no sense, globalization, all these jobs moving out of the country. How is that good for America? You know, but it's all part of a plot to take down Western civilizations and the United States in particular. But there isn't an investigative journalist out there that wants to look into this, because the whole Black Lives Matter thing makes no sense. White males are killed twice as often as blacks are, when blacks commit 57% of violent crimes and whites only commit about 20%. Nobody will tell you that, but look it up. Go Google it. That's the truth. So there's something else behind what's going on right now. And, you know, and people are very, very easily manipulated, very manipulated.
Well, there was some talk that Beyonce and Jay-Z were two of the big financiers of the Black Lives Matter movement.
I don't know. I don't think it's them. I really think it's that Soros, Angela Merkel. You know, her borders, you know, why did Brexit happen? Because the borders are open in Europe. You have all these third world people pouring into Europe. The same thing Obama's doing here. There's another group out there that has a plot to take this country down, and you do it covertly, you know, by globalization, moving our jobs out, causing race riots, all the things that you see going on. And I really believe it comes out of Central Europe, you know, whether it's those bankers, because the bottom line is, how do they get more money? You know, if you move the jobs out to the rest of the world, everybody's making more money than having them here. And I believe that there's a plot like that against this country.
Well, I can say this. In my little hick town of British Columbia, way up north, we have actually seen an influx of German migrants. And and I've even talked to a few of them, and I said, why are you coming here of all places, in the middle, literally the middle of nowhere of British Columbia? And their answer was simple. What the media isn't showing you is the riots, the fighting, the raping, the pillaging that is going on, the break and enters, the violence, all being caused by men from third world countries. The women and children aren't doing it. It's the men.
How can you be a leader like Angela Merkel and allow this to happen? I mean, the Brits saw it. I was in Scotland in June. Right, I was there days before the vote. Actually, I flew back, and it was a couple of days later, and I had talked to people there, you know, in Scotland, and they did the right thing. They were not going to allow this immigration to just run over their country. They pulled out, even though they knew it was going to hurt them economically. So how does Angela Merkel do this? She's basically destroying Europe and getting away with it. How can it's the same thing in this country. After 9/11, how can our borders be open? I don't understand it. It makes no sense unless you're part of a plot to destroy the country, to destroy Western civilization. And I believe that is the plot.
Well, I can say this from a Canadian point of view, living on a border town. When we ended up getting blamed for 9/11, okay, because somehow Canada took the blame for American prison guards letting in these people through the Canadian border, and we took blame for that, I can see why they've shut down the borders as tight as they have. I think it's absolutely ridiculous that me as a longtime Canadian citizen has to show a passport at the longest unprotected border in the world in order to go visit family or friends in the United States. We're all one here on North America, so I think it went too far, at least on our border that's connecting.
Yeah, well, there is so much. You know, I was such a Bush supporter, but I look at it now. He was in on it. There's no way you look at Building 7. How did Building 7 collapse? I mean, no other skyscraper has ever collapsed from a fire. Maybe those did. I don't know. I mean, they obviously did. But how did Building 7 collapse? That was absolutely a controlled detonation. Absolutely. And, you know, I wrote a novel. I think it's that alternative history of mankind because I tried to explain everything. I said that the UFO evidence was in Building 7.
Oh, absolutely.
It was originally in the Murray Building in Oklahoma City, and it was moved to Building 7, and they had to destroy it so people wouldn't get their hands on it.
Oh, absolutely. You know, I mean, let's face it. In the world's history, there's only 3 buildings that have ever fallen by aircraft or fire. Only 3 steel frame buildings. And 2 of them had airplanes hit them.
One?
Building 7.
Say that again. I didn't hear you.
Building 7.
Oh, okay. Those 3 right there. Yeah, you're right. Okay. Yeah, it makes no sense.
I understand you. I fully understand you there. And, you know, getting this whole conspiracy side, I feel the blood boiling up on me, my friend. When we only got about 11 minutes with you, and I have to hit the demonology part with you because you have had a lot of really weird situations going on with demonology. Fill us in.
Well, you know, I've always had stuff happen, like when I was younger, 4 years old, 12 years old, 16 years old. Then I had a period where nothing happened through my high school, college, marriage, kids, years, until we moved to Oklahoma City. We moved there, and all of a sudden the footsteps up in the ceiling started, voices in the hallway, and from there we moved to New Jersey, and that was an absolute hell house. The moving boxes in the garage would slide around the floor. There would be dark black shadows moving across the ceiling. My son would hear voices in the wall saying he's going to get him. My daughter and later my girlfriend, who ended moving in after we got divorced, and I believe my whole divorce was caused by these entities. My wife's personality did a 180. I had no idea who I was dealing with. She became somebody else. All kinds of paranormal stuff in the house. People would come over and they'd see these black shadows moving across the ceiling. I saw them. It was a creepy environment. And then I moved here to Pittsburgh in 97. The day I moved in, there's constant tapping on the wall. And all kinds of things have happened in this house over the 19 years that I've been here. Walking, tapping, banging. I saw some sort of creature down the hallway one night. I actually have physical evidence. My son, my kids were over. They didn't live here with me. They stayed in New Jersey with their mother, but they were over. We heard somebody walking around in the hallways. I thought it was him. He thought it was me. In the morning, there are hand and arm prints on my mirror. 6 fingers, you can see the bone, no meat to the forearm, and they were 3 inches longer than my elbow to the fingertip, and I'm 6 feet tall, which would make this creature 7 feet tall, and what I saw down the hallway one night was 7 feet tall, and it had like a tiny waist, long lanky arms, just all kinds of stuff. But what culminated was, and you know, the coincidence is incredible. On the 20th anniversary of my divorce, now think about the coincidence, because I believe they caused the divorce. That's what these malevolent entities do, is break up families. I go upstairs and I smell, I thought the dog took a dump upstairs. And then I said, what is that smell? It smelled like a dead animal, rotting flesh, but it was pungent. It was in the hallway, and it was in that bathroom upstairs. So I put the fan on, and I came downstairs. I'm watching the baseball game. The dog, I have a 108-pound Doberman. He came over. He was kind of laying on my legs. All of a sudden on the wall, boom, this bang, I couldn't do myself. It was so loud. The picture, I have an Indian picture there. It lifted off the wall. I have 2 Indian headdresses on the sides of it. The feathers blew to the side. The dog turned, I turned. We both heard it. So it wasn't telepathic. It really happened. 3 hours later, I go upstairs. It still stinks of this dead animal. So I go to bed. Well, my dog goes down the hallway, looks up the attic stairs. He goes ballistic. He sees something up there. We go up there. We don't see anything. I go to bed. In my bathroom, the loudest bang you could. It was incredible how loud. Again, the dog and I, we both looked at the same time. I met this woman. She came over. And it's funny how things happen, because I think you have a guardian angel. She came over and, we started dating. she blessed the house. She said all of the St. Michael prayers, all of that. The house felt clean, and it stayed that way for about a year and a half. That was June of 14. Now think of the coincidence again, November of 15. And half of the things I described to you happened at Thanksgiving when I was together with my kids. I only got my kids for Thanksgiving. She got them for Christmas, and then I would see them every other week. But the paranormal stuff always happened at Thanksgiving. And then in my research, I find out that November is actually the peak of demonic activity. But it gets to Thanksgiving. My daughter is supposed to come over. She lives in North Carolina. She tells me she's flying up, but she's staying at her brother's house, who just moved near me. I was a little annoyed about that. 2 nights in a row, when I thought she was coming, I keep all the bedroom doors closed. I look down the hallway, her door's open. I close the door. The next night, her door's open. They were sending me a message. My daughter was attacked in 2010 in that bedroom by a shadow person, and they went into her body twice, and she heard voices in her head and all of that. So they were waiting for her to come back to this house. And then the tapping started every single day. Didn't matter what room I was in, constant banging on the wall. I'd lay down at night, I'd hear something moving in the ceiling, the weirdest sound, like dragging a body across the floor. There would be tapping sounds all around the room, banging sounds on the walls. This went on for weeks, and it started at Thanksgiving. Then it kind of culminated one night, and I was doing my research, and this all started when I decided to do my research on the gray alien abduction being demonic. I started that in June of 14, and that's when that thing showed up, which is another coincidence. But one night in particular, I started going to bed, and something would poke me like a sewing needle in my leg. I'd lay down, something would poke me in my forehead. This is where it went from infestation to oppression, and it was getting ready for a possession, which is the major attack upon you. And it's sleep deprivation is what they do. They wear you out. I lay down. This is all going on, the banging, the tapping. I sit up in bed, and I did what the woman showed me. I commanded it in the name of Jesus Christ to leave and, to go back to where it came from. And if they disobeyed, they'd go to the lake of fire. And now it all stopped. All of a sudden, boom, all the tapping, everything stopped. I lay down, then I opened my eyes, because you can't sleep. Every 20 minutes, I'm opening my eyes. I also, one time, I saw 3 shadow people spinning around the ceiling fan counterclockwise, like 3 shadow spirits going around the fan. But I opened my eyes, and I'm in pitch blackness. I sat up in bed, and I looked around and I said, I've never seen it this dark in my bedroom. The moon was out a minute ago, and there was light coming through. All of a sudden, the sliding in the ceiling started, the banging in the corners of the room, and the loudest creaking sound you ever want to hear right above me. I thought like they crushed the house like a soda can. I knew an attack was being ready to launch upon me. And I, again, very, very forcefully commanded it to leave in the name of Jesus Christ. It cannot disobey, to go back to where it came from. And the thing that I added was about, if you disobey Jesus Christ, you will go to the lake of fire now. And I'm telling you, all of a sudden I saw a black veil lift. What caught my attention was the light. All of a sudden, moonlight came through the windows, the bathroom windows, the hallway, and for about 3 seconds, I saw a veil of black just lift, and I could see again in the little bit of moonlight that was there, and boom, it went quiet. It wasn't gone. Also, in June of 14, birds started flying into my house. A family of red cardinals would just fly into my windows, my office, and the front window. That went on for 22 months. So for the next couple of months, I'm still hearing occasional sounds, different bangs, different noises. I know they're still in the house. April 20th, I go to Myrtle Beach to visit my daughter in North Carolina. I decide to write this book on demonology and my life experiences. I didn't have my laptop, so I wrote it by hand. I get back to my house. I sit down in my office. I start typing my book. I look up. 130 feet of my backyard burst into flames, and I have pictures. 130 feet. The trees, the leaves, the whole thing just went up in flames. I look out the window. I live next to a cemetery. There's 3 guys in the cemetery. I called the police. I tell them they just lit my yard up. They must have put gasoline there or lighter fluid the way it all just went up like that. They must think it's funny. It turned out those guys were there from the cemetery. I had ordered a very, very religious 6-foot-tall headstone in the shape of the Holy Bible. It says Holy Bible, has religious stuff on it. They delivered it that day. Now think about this. I sit down to write the book with all my research on demonology, that the gray abduction is not ET. They deliver my headstone. The yard bursts into flames, and those birds stopped flying into my window. You talk about, I know I saw a miracle. I know that the fallen angel, the interdimensional, I know that that's all real. So that's where I view things now in a different light because it happened to me. But the thing is, it's not gone yet. It's still here. It's almost like something was...
It's like it's keeping quiet.
Yeah, well, what happened, I'll tell you, last week, I'm laying in bed, I say my prayers now every night. I got kind of annoyed, and I said, God, give me the sword of Michael, I will slay these things. Right above me, 2 of the loudest bangs you ever want to hear. Boom, boom! They were letting me know they're still here.
And
so they're lurking.
And on that note, John, I got to call it the night with you, my friend. Thank you so much.
All right. JohnVentry.com. See you.
JohnVentry.com. We thank John Ventre for being on Spaced Out Radio tonight. We'll be back right after this break.
Greetings and salutations, space travelers, from the Chronicles of the Unknown team.
What is Chronicles of the Unknown? I keep hearing about this thing.
It's a new paranormal reality TV show based right here in beautiful British Columbia, Canada. Follow our team as we uncover claims of activity on the Caribou Gold Rush Trail. You can also follow us here every third Monday, where 2 members of our team will be available to answer your questions. We'll give you some equipment updates and some of our experiences on the road, right here on Spaced Out Radio.
Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with UFO Cop. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com to the final Monday of every month from Butch Witkowski's Strange Days.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
This is your medium, Joanna, from Spaced Out Weekend, 2 mediums and a large. I would love it if you would come and join us with host James Tyson every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. Together, we will take your calls and your questions live. Our goal is to provide you with a positive outlook on deep questions that you may have. Questions regarding love, relationships, money, or whatever else is on your mind. Come and check us out at spacedoutradio.com.
Have you checked out the SOR Spacewire at spacedoutradio.com yet? Every day we post the latest stories regarding the weird, strange, and completely unbelievable. From cryptid and UFO sightings to the conspiracy world, we tackle it all. Hi there, I'm Eric Markham, Space Out Radio's news director for the SOR Spacewire. And if you have a story, I want to hear it. Email me at news@spacedoutradio.com.
Patrolling the Pacific Northwest, we are always on the lookout for the strange and unassuming stories that real people are experiencing. Hi, I'm Vincent Zunza from Pacific North Weird. Me and Alexandra Sullivan have teamed to bring to you those odd stories that never seem to make it into the mainstream. Stories so weird that will leave you scratching your head wondering, is this real? It's as real as it gets with Pacific North Weird. You can watch our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Become more intimate and interactive with Spaced Out Radio. Join our Space Travelers Club with your new membership. For $5 a month, we'll provide you with special access to the website, monthly prize draws from books to psychic readings, along with monthly newsletter, private interviews, and more. Sign up today to be part of Spaced Out Radio's experience.
Every month on Spaced Out Radio, we look into the deep and dark reports of cryptids roaming around the world with me, Rob Morphy, from Cryptopia.us. I would love it if you would join me and host Dave Scott as we delve into the most arcane stories and reports regarding creatures of the unknown. My job is to hunt down the details and bring the evidence forward to you. These aren't your regular Bigfoot stories I'm talking about either. You can find out more about crypto history at spacedoutradio.com.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
Find yourself constantly looking up in the sky, looking for answers? Have you had extraterrestrial contact? Are you an abductee? Looking for answers to your experiences? Hi there, I'm R. Keith Andrews, Spaced Out Radio's resident ET expert. Join me live the first Friday of every month where I take questions from the Spaced Out Radio chat room and help you understand those from the far-off world. It's 2 hours of knowledge every experiencer should listen to. Hope to see you there.
Did you know that Spaced Out Radio runs 7 days a week? Hi, it's James Tyson from Spaced Out Weekend. Every Saturday and Sunday night, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, you can join me and my guests for some great chatter about what's going on out in the universe, or even in that dark part of the basement you really don't want to go back into. Well, let's find the answers to your experiences together. So come on up to Uncle Jimbo's cabin on the weekend. For more information, look us up at spacedoutradio.com.
Would you like to connect with us on Spaced Out Radio?
Head to spacedoutradio.com
to check out the latest shows, guests, and sponsors. And don't forget to sign up for the Space Travelers Club. You'll find all you need at spacedoutradio.com. Welcome back to Space Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Good to have you with us on this Tuesday night, early Wednesday morning. If you were on the East Coast, good to have you all here tonight as we do this thing 7 days a week, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time. I host Monday through Friday. Uncle Jimbo and Elizabeth Anglin are here Saturday and Sunday night for Spaced Out Weekend. And thank you so much for everyone participating in the chat rooms of the SOR Space Travelers on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio's chat room on Spreaker, and, of course, all of you on Revolution Radio's chat room. Thanks so much for being with us. Remember, if you are part of the Revolution Radio team, send in a donation, because Revolution Radio is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Hook it up today and keep it going for this great broadcasting team. Tomorrow night on the show, Rob Morphy will join us, the crypto historian from Cryptopia.us. We're going to get into some more weird and strange creatures of the night around North America. Well, some in the day too, but that's what we do. If you want to follow us on Twitter, you can do so at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, I can be followed at Dave Scott, SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show, and our website is spacedoutradio.com. While on our website, you can check out the SOR Spacewire by our news director, Eric Markham. You can also check out our great music that runs right through our show on spacedoutradio.com and on Spreaker. That is, of course, the guitar god himself, Ron Bumblefoot THAL, formerly of Guns N' Roses, who does all of our music for this show. And you can read our latest blogs, mine on making an emotional commitment to the fans. Try and write it out there. I'd love your response on that if you wouldn't mind either. And you can join the SOR Space Travelers Club. It only costs $5 a month. With that entry, you could be like Joe Allgaier, win prizes. The final Friday of every month, we make a prize draw. So you can win some prizes there. And you can also have a private section for posting on our website. You get private group interview access. You get a monthly newsletter. The interviews and the newsletter are being set up as we speak, and so much more. Unlike the other guys, we give you a heck of a lot more than just access to our archives. So, 2 hours down, we had John Ventre on. JohnVentre.com is his website. We were talking about the Kecksburg UFO incident, where he said he believes it was a spy satellite that came crashing down, not a UFO in Kecksburg on December 9th, 1965. John joined us for the first 2 hours. We bring in Eric Squared here for hour number 3, as we did last night. We got Eric Markham from the SOR Spacewire and Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal and S4. Gentlemen, good to have you back.
Glad to be here. It's always awesome to be here.
It is always fun to have you here as well. So let's start off with it. John Ventre had a very good argument tonight, Coop, in regards to the Kecksburg incident being a satellite and not a UFO. What's your take on this?
Here's my take, and don't get me wrong, I can get completely on board with not everything being ET. I don't think everything is ET, not by a long shot. And I can get on board with, he was there, or not when it happened, but he was actually there doing research on it. And I can get on board with that. My problem with what he said is anytime you have, and if any aircraft goes down, they are going to rope it off. I've done accident investigation training and whatnot. When I was in aviation, if we had an Apache go down, because of the sensitive material that's on that helicopter, for example, it would be barricaded off, it would be blocked off, and it would be guarded for 24 hours and we were in Germany when I was in the Apache unit, and it would be on armed guard until the accident investigation team came from D.C. Now, if that was space junk, if that was just something, randomly falling from the sky that was not an ET craft, and I can get on board with that, why was the military there if it wasn't something sensitive? And if it was a radiation risk, I'm sorry, but no, they're not going to just throw it up on a flatbed truck and throw a couple tarps over it and go traipsing it off to their base. That's not going to happen. If there was a radiation risk, which if it came from space, there probably was anyway, that area would have been secure for a lot longer than it was. And so, was it ET? Who's to say? If it was sensitive, it very well could have been a spy satellite, and it very well could have been something similar to the Bell from the Nazis, But that's where I stand. I think there's a lot more to the story than what's being told.
Eric Markham, what is your opinion?
Well, look at the paranoia in that era, and maybe they didn't know what it was. They just had something that broke out of orbit, or there's so much about that. I mean, there's actually pictures of this thing that looks like a bad 50s movie monster with glowing eyes. It was passed around the papers, and if it was a satellite, I believe they would have handled it, with military, because, they don't know if it's ours, the Soviets, or what. So I think they were trying to do some kind of damage control. I'm kind of on board that it might not have been. It just dawned on me, though. They mentioned how it didn't just crash. Seems like it maneuvered around a little bit, like it tried to take off again. Coop, do you remember reading something about that? Or either one of you? It seems like it moved through the woods after it crashed, or tried to take off, and there was this like ammonia smell.
I don't remember that with that. I remember that with Rendlesham. Rendlesham didn't crash though, but Rendlesham moved through the woods. I don't remember hearing anything about Kecksburg. If I remember right, Kecksburg just crashed, and then the military was there rather quick. And for them to, and that's the other part of my problem with it. Yeah, somebody was tracking it, because for the military to be there within 40 minutes, like the records state, that's really odd to me.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean,
but there was also, supposedly it had some kind of weird hieroglyphics running around the bottom part of it.
Exactly. And you know what? That's a question I forgot to ask John. I had it written down.
Yeah, I was going to ask that too, and I forgot.
Of course, Air Force would just said it was the tape that it was taped together with toy maker tape like the
right
Roswell.
Well, because if you remember right, Roswell had the same symbols.
Yeah, I've heard that they said that they were the same.
Well, you know what? It's one of those debates that will continue. We do know that there are official answers out to this, except we know that they will never be disclosed, gentlemen.
No, and they'll never be. The truth will never be told.
We need a time machine just so we can go back to some of these weird instances, observers, and say, "Oh, it wasn't a weather balloon," or "Oh, wow, damn, it really was just a weather balloon." That would be my thing, I think. Go and verify.
And Joe Algier is saying he heard the same thing, that the Kecksburg maneuvered and changed direction before it hit.
Okay, I thought I had heard something about that.
Yeah.
That it wasn't just
Joe.
a ballistic, if I remember right, it wasn't just a ballistic type of trajectory. It tried to correct itself.
And, another thing to bring up with that, if it corrected itself and it changed the trajectory, it didn't hit or impact at full, at full force, then why would they have to weld it or cut it out?
Oh, that's right. That was supposedly wedged in a tree, maybe?
Right.
Huh.
I mean, you're still going to have some impact there, but not like they're showing in the reports.
Would the heat, maybe it burned its way into the tree?
It could have.
Because it came down. They say that it was like a fireball.
Mm-hmm.
So, if it came down, hit a very thick area of woods, it could have burned into the... I don't know. That's... Like you said, that's one we'll never know. There's so many different reports, and you don't know how much of it was just the local guy with the local paper thinking, here's my Pulitzer.
Now for a future discussion, I do have people in Kingman, Arizona that are with MUFON, and we can get more information on the Kingman crash as well. I don't have them at access right now, because I've heard a lot about the Kingman, Arizona crash too.
I've got a friend that lives there. I'll reach out to him, a musician friend. That could be a good source if he's heard anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
I have no friends in Kingman, Arizona, or Arizona at all, so I can't help out on that. But I can do some good research on that.
Exactly.
I promise you I will. How often do you guys think, and Eric Markham, I'll start with you here, because you're not only educated in science, but you are also ex-Navy as well. How many UFO crashes do you think have happened? Do you think it's one a year that maybe we're covering up? Maybe one every couple of years that we're covering up?
I have to ask myself, what is it about Earth? These people can make it all the way from wherever they get here and they wreck their flying saucer.
Atmosphere.
If they're well, they've got to be
built by Ford.
Be smart enough. Oh, don't go there. No, but I'm saying, what is it? Is it our magnetosphere? You would think they would be smart if they're smart enough to get here. Why are they crashing their UFOs once they're here? Is it a way of defecting? Or are they trying to feed us? Is this their way of maybe getting around the rules if there's an agreement about what's going on? It's like, oh, damn, we weren't going to turn it over to them, but, we ran out of gas and crashed right there in the desert.
I'm still a firm believer on another Ford recall, but that's just me.
Forced disclosure.
Yeah, could be. Or a workaround that might be saying, you can't let your technology get in the hands of the talking monkeys over there on Earth. Okay. But if we crash, if we, pull a plug or have a so-called mechanical failure and we crash in the desert, well, gee, sorry.
Hey, guys.
I don't know how many there would be a year because we'll never really get an official Navy document saying, 52 USOs, logged this week kind of thing.
I did forget to mention the SOR Space Traveler's Password of the Night. I must update it now. Bill Knight, members of the SOR Space Travelers Club. Otherworldly is your password for tonight, so make sure you use it wisely.
Perfect. That's perfect for tonight.
Yep.
Well, I like my answer the best. Blasphemous Buddha in Revolution Radio's chat room stated maybe their air brakes failed. I still think it's a Ford. I still think it's a Ford recall. Claudia in the SOR Space Travelers mentions because Earth women are so beautiful they crash. This is true. This is very true.
As they swing by the beach.
Right?
Exactly.
Over Vegas.
Well, I can tell you this. As someone who has seen a UFO on the ground, I can tell you that I did not hear that ship come in. I did not hear it leave. But I sure as hell saw it there because of the lights that came on. I'm sure there's crash sites that there is absolutely crash sites out there that have never been discovered.
Oh, there's spots on this planet that man's never been to. Alaska, for example, and the Himalayas. There's places in the mountains that have never been explored. So I have no doubt. And you've heard of the Tunguska explosion. That was like an atomic bomb. I can't remember it was eons ago, a few hundred years ago. And no meteor caused that, but that just goes to show we had UFO crashes back in, the 1800s. And I think that was before that. I'd have to look it up. But, yeah. And, you have one crash. Roswell was supposed to have crashed because it hit another spacecraft that crashed in Mexico.
Yes. And you know what? I actually had a witness to that second crash on Spaced Out Radio about a year and a bit ago, about a year and a half ago. A gentleman by the name of Gerald Anderson, who hadn't spoke publicly in 22 years. He was 5 years old when he came across that crash site with his dad, and he walked up, he touched the ship, he touched one of the beings that was dead. He touched one of the beings that was alive. They were there for 30 minutes before the government arrived. And the theory on that is they collided over New Mexico because there was a major thunderstorm that night. combined with the military radar that was going absolutely crazy because they were testing nuclear weapons in New Mexico at that time, that it was just a bad scenario where lightning may have hit one of the ships. It went boom. The first one went down immediately. The other one staggered over to Corona, which became the Roswell incident. It's easier to cover up the second one when the first one is a weather balloon.
Well, the whole thing with that Project Mogul is Project Mogul happened, 3 or 4 years after Roswell? There was no Project Mogul at the time of Roswell. By the Air Force's own, the Air Force trotted that out, and then it's like, oh, crap, we hadn't done that. Oh, well, nobody will notice. Don't pay attention to the man behind the draperies.
Exactly. I have a couple questions in the Spaced Out Radio chat room on Spreaker. This one from Poet Laureate Corrine de Winter. Eric Squared, and we'll start with you, Cooper. What did you think of John Ventre? Do you think he was truthful or not?
I'm not going to come out and voice my opinion. I think he believes firmly, like all experiencers. I'm going to say, I think he believes his beliefs, and that's good. Everyone needs to. I don't agree with him. I don't think everything's a demon. I know a lot of demonologists. I know a lot of psychics and mediums that deal with entities on a regular basis, and out of 100 to 300 cases, have maybe seen a demon once, twice. And to go out there and say all grays, which I heard him say in the end of the show, are demonic, no, not by a long shot. So that's where I stand on that.
The other Eric, your opinion?
I agree that he believes I think he believes in what he's saying. I think he's got some of it wrong, but I think he's being truthful in as much as he's convinced of his truth. But that's us experiencers in a nutshell. We know we were there. We know what we saw, what we learned at the time, what the impressions were, and if you don't have any kind of way of documenting it, you're hanging out there in the breeze. But take it with a grain of salt. So much of what perception isn't really understood. What we call reality, what we call solid, is on a molecular level damn near nothing but empty space. So there's so much room out there for everything.
Okay, but I'll debate you guys on this one for a little bit, because you guys believe my stories. I believe your stories. That's his experience. And that's what his personal research has showed him. So therefore, how is he not going to come up with that format rather than something that you've experienced and learned, Eric Cooper, or you, Eric Markham, or even myself? I'm not trying to play politically correct here, but I can honestly sit here and say that, you have to take their story at face value because that's what he's experienced.
I fully agree, and that's why I said I'm not going to debate him on it, because that was his experience.
But then you gotta wonder how much of an experience. What was his preconceived notion when he started to research it? Did he lean toward? Did he already have it in mind that grays are demons, and he'd only researched into sources that backed up? As somebody who's done research, I know how easy it is to skew your data by what you research when you're trying to set up an experiment. If he already had a preconceived idea that, or he had heard some other ufologist or somebody say that, even if he wasn't consciously swaying himself toward that information, that might have been in the back of his mind the whole time. And aimed him that way.
Could be.
Yeah, that and religious belief plays a big part in everybody. And if you haven't looked at spirits in general can take on the signs and symptoms of a demon very easily. Most of your proclaimed demonic cases are actually pissed off spirits. Spirits can cause scratches. Spirits can take on shadow forms. Spirits can do the same things. That's why not everything. Most true demonic cases don't come across as physical. They come across when there's a demonic attack. It's more subtle, and it's more psychiatric. To be honest with you. So,
more like the way it was portrayed in the movie, not to go into fiction, but kind of like the way it was portrayed in Constantine, where they nudge you toward a weakness you already have, and make you get, weaker and make you succumb to a temptation where there's a chink in your armor.
Exactly. Yeah, most demons aren't going to. Most people that die due to demonic kill themselves because the demon caused them to, essentially.
Well,
now on that note, I am curious, and I may pick up his book. I would like to hear more of his theories on demons.
Yeah, I was intrigued by that.
Yeah, me too. And Shar brings up a good point in the Space Out Radio chat room on Spreaker, that she's saying he didn't say all were demons. He even wrote the book that proves that aliens exist. So we do have to give a little bit of leeway there. I do have a question from SJ in the Spaced Out Radio chat room on Spreaker. She is saying, when we were talking about ships that crash, she's saying, what if those ships are crashing because they're not alien ships at all, but they're ours?
Well,
it's a good point. My argument with that is, as we said earlier, the hieroglyphs. Those weren't Egyptian; those were unknown. If I recall right, they didn't know what the symbols were.
Yeah, and it seems like that some of the really good cases, like Rendlesham, Peniston talks about there having been some kind of hieroglyphics on the side, some kind of writing. You've worked around aircraft. I was on aircraft carrier. Even terrestrial aircraft have things that say, no step here, rescue port here.
Right.
They probably have to do the same thing on, anything that flies. Anything that flies has probably got to be serviced, so it's probably just the alien. Don't step here.
Yeah, we think it's amazing, but in all reality, it just says no smoking and zeta reticulum or something.
Yeah, exactly. It's probably a mundane thing like do not use as tow point, or what's something you've seen removed before flight.
Right.
Some kind of mundane.
There used to be a purple flag there, but instead of the purple flag, they removed it, and it's in Pleiadian language or something.
I think that would be hilarious if that ever comes out. That, all that was is make sure to top off gas tank before heading to Earth. Something mundane.
Right. Oh.
Well,
and
go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm just looking at Claudia's comment that maybe they built the pyramids for the alien technology to hide their ships, and that's always, wouldn't that be interesting if it turns out the pyramids were nothing but flying saucer hangars?
Well,
we thought they were special.
Tombs. I mean, I don't care.
Right?
Iowa says they weren't tombs.
No.
And when you consider, I think there was only one that was ever a body was found in it. They think that was just a vanity thing. It wasn't necessarily that's what it was designed for, because where they find all the bodies and all the mortuary stuff is in a completely called the Valley of the Kings, and it has nothing to do with pyramids. So I'm of the mind that pyramids were something beyond. They weren't tombs. I don't know what they were, but I just really don't think they were tombs.
Well, you know what? That is something that, the ancient aliens can talk about on numerous occasions, which, I don't know. I agree with John Ventre on that. I think the show is at times a tad ridiculous, but that's just me.
But I like his hair.
Oh, Giorgio Tsoukalos? Absolutely. How can you not? It
he has awesome hair.
It almost matches your beard.
It does. It does. My beard's not all over the place like his hair is, but totally.
Nothing but, it just takes a hairbrush to cure that. One thing I did like about that show is they took that little, it looks like a Delta Wing jet. Mm-hmm. They found it in Peru, and they actually built a model of it, and it flew beautifully. It glided, it would start to stall, but it would self-correct, and it just, I'm sure that could have been manipulated, but it was interesting that they went there. They said, well, everybody says this is an airplane, let's build one and see if it flies. And sure enough. So there's something to that.
It's cool. When I was stationed in Atlanta, I remember because that was like the heart of when I was doing research the most, when I started. And I saw an ad. It was real brief, but there's a guy that was actually going to build a flying saucer in Atlanta, Georgia. And it was about the same time that I got a phone call from an alien. And I've never told this story before. This is the first time I've ever actually talked about this. I told you, Dave, a couple months ago. But I've never actually, because it's just one of those, and it's insignificant to me because of some of the things I've been through, so I don't think about it. But it was intriguing because during that time frame, I met this. I don't even remember where I met him, but we met at a restaurant because he was living in a hotel, and I don't remember what species he claimed he was, but I remember he was expecting to talk to us, and he was not from here. He was an alien. He was an otherworlder, as we call him. And some of the things, I mean, he knew stuff that he was an amazing guy. I only met him that one time. I don't know what happened to him after that. He was real paranoid. I mean, for obvious reasons for what he said he was. And I gotta say, Atlanta was a very interesting time.
Did he ever give you his name?
I don't remember. This is back in 2000. I mean, it was 16, 17 years ago. And I honestly don't remember. Maybe I'm not supposed to remember. I don't know. I just remember the guy does stick out when I think about it, and it was interesting. And yes, Bruce, it was a phone call from an alien. E.T. called Eric.
I'm trying to, I remember seeing or hearing the story one time, and I might have the band wrong, and that's why I'm not finding it. The footprint is completely gone online, but it seems like there was one of the early rock bands, and I can't remember. I'm thinking it was Steppenwolf. One of the members was actually a physicist, and he had actually figured out.
Wasn't that Jimi Hendrix's bass guitarist?
No, this guy was legit, and he disappeared. And he called. The last phone call he ever said, it was, "I am going to commit suicide." Blah blah blah, but it wasn't like somebody who was despondent. It was like somebody who was being told what to say. And there's other inconsistencies in the story in that they claim that they found his car with his dead body in it later. Well, then as that story came out, there's this thing in the news about 20 years after, suicide, vehicle found. It's one of those, but supposedly he had figured out how to do faster than light drive and was eliminated for it. But I cannot find, but it was one of the early 60s, late, 70s rock bands, and I can't, it's gone now. The more I look for it online, I've tried Steppenwolf, Iron Butterfly, all those, and it's gone. The information about it's gone.
I read something on the Chive about a gentleman like that. And I'm trying to find the story right now because I literally just read it tonight. So I'm scrolling through right now trying to find it. Do you think I'm having any luck right now? Of course not.
Of course not.
Of course not. But you know who else was a pretty smart musician that works in science is Brian May from Queen.
I tried to read his PhD dissertation, and it wasn't a fluff piece at all. I mean, that's because I was amazed. It's like, okay, Brian May is a PhD astrophysicist as well as a butt-kicking guitar player. Go team guitar, But yeah, that whole thing about galactic spin, and I couldn't follow it. I didn't have the astrophysical berries and the mathematics background good enough to follow that one.
So where did the song Major Tom come from?
Oh, I have heard that with Major Tom, it was David Bowie's way, like a metaphor for how fame destroys your life, or there was a lot of metaphor and a lot of. Plus, he probably just getting, things, trying to get something into the mainstream that was space oriented, space cells.
But that was back in the 70s during, and about basically an astronaut.
Yeah, but the way that was 69.
Was it?
Yeah, the album was, I think it was his self-titled album, David Bowie. That should have been... Actually, I think the original album was called David Bowie, and it was re-released and retitled Space Oddity.
Yeah, okay, I got you. Because, and if it came out in 69, it probably came out when the man was launched on the moon, basically.
Was that, when did Apollo 13, when did that happen? Was that maybe a response to that?
71?
71? Okay, so it wasn't a... He had a lot of weird stuff, though. He did a lot of space-themed, scary monsters, oh, Lord, Hello, Space Boy. He's got a lot, Black Star, he's got a lot of space-themed. Plus, he had a little bit of a fascination with sci-fi because he was, what was The Man Who Fell to Earth, I think? He actually acted in a couple sci-fi movies. I think I had heard that it was actually an autobiographical symbol. That, it was all like couched in junkie language or something. Kind of like Puff the Magic Dragon was supposed to be was supposedly about smoking a doob. So, I'm sure.
Yeah, Apollo 13, April 11, 1970.
Okay, so that was after. I was always almost wondering if it wasn't an answer to that. I was awful. I still remember people talking about that vaguely when I was little, because I remember people talking about, oh, well, they make it home, and it's almost like they're our own kids. And I wasn't quite sure who they were talking about until later. I put two and two together, and it's like, oh, that's what everybody was talking about. But yeah.
And here I am still trying to find this report. Be damned if I can find it. I hate it when your scroll update on your phone updates on Facebook. And
you lose, you lose a post.
You're like, damn it. I'm getting everything on here but that. Everything. I don't get it. Don't get it. This is why I hate technology. Oh, I can find out some hockey facts right now. Like, go figure. That's the way I roll around here, when it comes to, obviously.
When all else fails, go to hockey.
you never go wrong. You never go wrong with hockey. I will tell you this. Brian Cox.
Yes, I think that's the guy. No. Dang it. I keep hoping No, that's not him. I've got names popping in my head. I'm trying. When a name pops in, I try and see if it's the guy I was trying to think about or find about.
Claudia in the SOR Space Travelers wants to know our theories as to why the Mayan people disappeared. Who wants to go first?
I see that.
That's I think they grew so large as a population that they overutilized. They grew past their resources. And actually, they didn't go extinct. It's just that they left their cities. My stepdaughter's Mayan, of Mayan extraction, so they're still there. It's just they don't have an empire anymore.
No, now is she talking about the Mayans, or is she talking about the
Olmecs?
No, she has typed down Mayan people.
Yeah. Who am I trying to think of? There's also a race in New Mexico that disappeared.
Oh, the Anasazi.
Anasazi. There you go. Now that's the one.
That just there's like
they disappeared.
Like there one day, gone the next.
Right, and they disappeared. Their dinner table still have food on it. I mean, they disappeared like that. And yeah, the Mayans are still around. I'd have to agree with you, Eric, because the Mayan bloodline is still around. The Anasazi, however, that's the one I've always been troubled by.
Yes, that was. There's a book out there called Anasazi Dreams. Can't think of the author's name. I got it on my Kindle for free, and it's a metaphysical. It's supposed it's a true story about him finding that his answer to it is that they achieved a higher frequency and moved into, just sort of all at once. The whole bunch of them vibrated out of our reality. But here again, there's a book involved.
There's always a book involved.
A book to flog.
Exactly. If you don't have a book to flog, I think you're really out of touch with today's date. I mean, you should have a book out now. Even all of you listeners out there should have a book. Gloria is asking, why are pyramids present in so many different cultures thousands of miles apart? And Joe says, Philip Kramer, Iron Butterfly.
Thank you. God, yes. Kramer.
Inagata Davida.
God, of course. Yeah, even the guitar name Kramer. Gee, Money Christmas. Yeah, that guy.
G Money Christmas. I haven't heard that. Is that a North Carolina term?
No. Me not trying to say a bad word. Oh, Lord. Yeah, that was him. And there's so many inconsistencies with that story. The when it happened, how it was covered, and then they said later that they found his van, and it was a totally two different narratives. Now, whether that's a case of one of those, Mandela effect things, don't know, but I do remember hearing that he had told a family member that if you hear I committed suicide, I was murdered. I think it was his father or his somebody. I saw the person interviewed because they said no, he wasn't. Because they knew he was dead back in when it first happened, and then it was shortly after I was out of college. Around 99, 2000, they trotted out that they found his remains and his van, but there were already pictures of the van from the era. They knew it was there's something went on with Philip Kramer. I don't know. I think that might be something good to look into for a show. Because
I've got a question
and
for
after
you.
Stuff, yeah.
I've got a question for Eric. What have you found out about that video we talked about?
The consensus on that video is that it's a hoax.
Which video?
Okay.
Which video?
There was a video that was released from CERN where a guy was doing a video from the CERN buildings in Switzerland and videotaped what appeared to be the Illuminati in robed individuals conduct a human sacrifice. And
that's pleasant.
Isn't it though? But the response of the guy that was shooting the video is what struck me the oddest. Is he just freaked the hell out. There's a whole bunch of expletives because he saw what was going on. He pretty much dropped his camera, and it was stunning to say the least.
Now, to me, that's the part of it that made it not seem as real to me, because I would personally be frozen in horror. It's like, did I really just see that? Oh my God, really? And I would try probably. Now, of course, this is me. I don't know. Maybe I know I'm abnormal. We'll just skip right to that. But it's like, wait a minute, is there any blood? God, is that for real? Oh, I forgot we had a question about pyramids. The earliest, they think the reason so many different cultures have pyramids is it's one of the easiest things to build, the Merkaba, or, you start with a broad base, you stack. It's sort of an act like you watch little kids playing with blocks and they make pyramids. And that's why they think so many different cultures you find pyramids, because when you don't have cranes it's an easy thing to build and it looks cool.
But here's what's funny with that though. You find pyramids in the ocean.
Well, there was a time that the Mediterranean Ocean was not an ocean. It was below sea level, and it was land. And I think it was supposed to have been a humongous earthquake or something broke. I guess it would be where the Straits of Messina are. And all of a sudden it went from being habitable farmland to being lakefront property. That's one of I read that in a geology. So with the shifting water, maybe that's why they find them under, maybe they were on dry land at one time. Now they're underwater. I mean, most of the west of America was a shallow inland sea at one time. So things have changed a lot. That is interesting, though, when you see that. You got to wonder, how did they, who built it? If you could go with traditional anthropology, the answer would be, well, it must have been dry land at one time.
Eric Cooper, you have a question or a movie coming out that you wanted to talk about.
Oh, it's not my movie. Yeah. Arrival is coming out November 11th. It was sent to me by SJ to look at, because she knows I'm the UFO guy. It's intriguing, to say the least. I did post the link.
Is that a remake?
I don't think so. No, it's not a remake. It's 2016. It's got Forrest Whitaker, and it's got... hold on, let me pull it back up again. I know it's got Forrest Whitaker, who I love Forrest Whitaker movies anyway.
Yes.
I think he's a great actor.
What about all his B-rated films of the 80s and 90s? Never mind Platoon, but all around Platoon. He was all in like the B and C rated movies.
Man's got to make a living. They asked one of the big time, I think it was Sean Connery or Michael Caine, about some of the pot boilers he was in. And he says, man, they offer you so much money. Yeah, you just can't. You can't turn it down. Yeah.
The thing that, yeah, and the thing Dave and I were talking about this movie earlier, is that, yeah, they make the Russians look bad. They always, in every movie, it's a very intriguing movie until all of a sudden the Russians killed one of the aliens. And so now the spaceship's going back up into, and it portrays a human reaction perfectly. Because, I mean, of course, you got the military, they're all hoo-hoo, and they got their guns, and they're going to go kill the aliens, and that's how they act. And then they have this woman scientist who is supposed to be the
Does it seem familiar?
It almost reminds me of
The Day the Earth Stood Still.
Yes and no, but they don't send out a messenger.
Oh.
Not at all. I'm trying to think of, it doesn't really remind me of anything. It's unique. Because they don't come down shooting, they don't come down invading the Earth. They come down and they're there. It's a spaceship that's just there. And we go to the spaceship. The spaceship doesn't come out attacking anybody. And they don't show the spaceship attacking even towards the end of the trailer. It just starts going back up because apparently Russia killed one of the aliens.
I'll have to watch that later. Check it out.
It's always the damn Russians. You can't trust them.
Ain't it though?
Yeah. Now that we're not friends anymore, they're not our fuzzy allies like all those movies after Perestroika where it was us and the Russians were doing joint things together and being one big happy family.
I think
now
we are
being
behind the
bad
scenes.
Guys. Yeah,
I think we are behind the scenes. Just like the Cold War was never really a Cold War.
No, it was quite warm at times.
It was.
Hey, guys, we only got a couple minutes left, and this has flown by, but I want to get to this story on CNN right now out of Youngstown, Ohio. Former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani, who served as mayor during 9/11, claimed Monday that there had not been any successful radical Islamic terrorist attacks in the United States in the 8 years before President Obama took office. Obama was sworn in January 2009. If I do my math correctly, September 11th, 2001 was less than 8 years. Like, I have to say it. Are people buying this bullshit?
I'm sure they are.
Like, how can he... Like, this frustrates me, because how can he... And let's face it, he was a well-respected dude after 9/11. It doesn't matter if it was terrorists or inside job or whatever. But to come out and say something that stupid and that much of a slap in the president's face, whether you love him or hate him.
Right.
You just don't do that.
No, not at all. That's completely disrespectful. I see that because they're not going to hurt Obama. Obama's on his way out. He's got, 2 or 3 months. You're not going to hurt the guy. You're not going to make him look bad. The haters are going to hate him. The lovers are going to love him. Yeah, that is a blatant attack on Clinton because Obama endorses Clinton.
Right. I get that. I get that. But are we now saying in the conspiracy tinfoil hat world that 9/11 didn't happen?
And apparently he's trying to say it didn't when everyone knew it because, yeah.
I think, and I apologize for cutting you off. I want to get this out here first.
Oh, no, you're fine.
I have a feeling that if that comment picks up and we start seeing 9/11 videos disappear, we now know why.
Mm-hmm.
We have to watch for that because that's an important comment. I mean, he's I almost said it, the mayor of the city.
I know.
And you're that idiotic. You're that blinded. And the sad part is people are going to buy that shit. Pardon my language. I shouldn't say that.
They are. And I'm sorry, but I started losing confidence in society in this country when Trump came up. And I'm sorry, Markham. I know you like Trump.
Oh, I don't like Trump. I'm just I'm going to vote for I'm not going to vote for Hillary. I will vote for my cat before I will vote for Hillary.
Exactly. But, I mean, even today, you've still got Trump saying stupid crap.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that was a blatant attack. And yeah, you're absolutely right. On the other side of that, we need to watch for 9/11 videos to start disappearing. I completely agree. Because for Giuliani, the one that stood in the middle of 9/11, to sit there and say, basically, that wasn't a terrorist attack?
Like, okay, here's...
I'm trying to on that. I'm trying to find out if they took something and cleverly edited it. It's not like that hasn't happened. Eric, somebody has said something and they piece it together to make it sound like something else.
I would say that if it wasn't on every major news source. If it was on one of these alternative media sites, can you believe that this person said this? I wouldn't buy that crap whatsoever. But when it's on every major media news source, I mean, how stupid do you have to think that the American public is for you to sit there and tell people that no terrorist attack happened in the 8 years previous of Obama being elected? I mean, that's just sheer stupidity on his part.
The president
I got into an argument.
The precedent was set in 1949. Read George Orwell's 1984 about politispeak and how they'll say this is, these are our friends in the morning and by the night you're at war with them because they did, it's...
Hey, maybe Giuliani and Coco in the Spaced Out Radio chat room has a good point here. 9/11 was an attack, all right, but not by who you think. Maybe what he's saying is it wasn't Middle Eastern people who did that.
Well, he might... the inside job?
Maybe.
And that would be an interesting point if it came from him.
Yeah, that would kind of give the 9/11
we'll have to see.
A little leg up.
Right.
I'm watching this story to see because I'm going to have... This looks like something I'm going to have to keep up with.
Right.
Gentlemen, on that note...
Okay.
Coop, you got the last word. You got about 30 seconds.
I got into an argument today from someone that was trying to say Obama created ISIS. And I can tell you for a fact that the originator of ISIS was in Iraq when I was in Iraq. And he was detained. And ISIS was started during the Bush administration, not during the Obama administration. And on that note...
A power vacuum, when we created a power vacuum in Iraq.
Right.
By taking out the...
Well, just remember, there is that famous photo, gentlemen, of John McCain sitting with the ISIS leadership in Syria before all hell broke loose there. Let's remember that. Gentlemen, I got to let you go. Eric Squared with us the final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. We also want to thank John Ventre for being our guest in the first couple of hours. Thank you to everyone listening in the chat room. Spaced Out Radio's chat room on Spreaker, Facebook at the SOR Space Travelers, and Revolution Radio. Good to have you all with us. We'll talk to you tomorrow night. Rob Morphy is our guest, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern. Talk to you soon.